worthwhile. Without if we had empty chairs out here, this would not be any fun at all. And that's what we're trying to have tonight. We want to have some fun. We want to get some answers to questions so that you can determine how it is you wish to vote on May 6th. We're going to start off tonight with a 3-minute introduction of each candidate. We're starting off with candidate for mayor, Bradley Wance.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bradley Wance, and I want to be your mayor. I'm offering to you a new generation of leadership for Taneytown. I was born and raised in this city. I'm raising my children here in the city. And because of that, I have a better view of what children look for in a city like this. Where do they want to be raised, and what programs should be offered. I've served the last 4 years on the city council, and proudly say that I've been very accomplished in that feat. Prior to that, I served 2 years on the Board of Zoning Appeals. And I'm just looking forward to offering a kind of leadership that will get the community engaged, something that will open up the City Hall to the people, that they can come in and they can talk. Everyone's open to hear what they have to say. Like I said, this is a community I want children to be happy to grow up in, and that's where I am with my kids. I want them to be proud of where they come from, and that means offering things to everybody in the community. I'm looking forward to starting an initiative for parks called Something for Everyone, something that will offer programs for a larger percentage of our demographic, and right now that's something that's sorely missing. At the same time, I believe that while development is healthy, there's a time where we need to slow down the development and make sure that our infrastructure can keep up with what we're planning. If we continue at the rate that we're going, I'm afraid we're going to overrun our infrastructure and run into larger problems down the road. So I encourage you to consider me for your vote for mayor, and I look forward to seeing you on May 6th and hopefully for 4 years after that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for taking time out of this evening to come out here, and those of you that are watching, whether it be live or replay of this event. My name is Paul Chamberlain. I moved to Taneytown back in November of 2002, married, have 5 children. I'm also 10 years experience in the Air Force, had a business myself for 10 years, and since 2001, I've been selling RVs. And what I'm looking to bring to Taneytown as your next mayor is the leadership qualities that I have from my experience, as well as the passion and energy that I feel is missing. Things that I feel that need to be addressed immediately, obviously, would be the police department. It needs to have an outside agency audit the agency, so that way there, the next chief of police can start with a clean slate. At the same time, we need to be looking at filling the vacant city manager position. And thirdly is getting a handle or starting to do something about the downtown traffic and figuring out a way to get the trucks off our downtown streets. So I'm asking for your vote on May 6th, and I appreciate you being here this evening.
Hello, my name is Jim McCarroll. I'm Mayor of Taneytown, a candidate for another term. I'd like to give you a little background on myself. In my personal life, I'm a branch manager at Reverse Mortgage Banker for Retirement Funding Solutions Division of Mutual of Omaha Bank. I've been in business for 16 years and I'm also a retired district manager for Southern States Co-op. I'm married to my wife Myra for 52 years. We have 4 children, 12 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. Lived in Taneytown for 36 years. I'm a graduate of the University of Maryland College Park and College of Agriculture. I was a certificate from the Virginia Tech Ag Lending School and a graduate of the University of Maryland Academy for Excellence in Government. I'm an active member of St. Joseph's Church in Taneytown, where I am a director of the Adult Catechumenate, a lector, chairman of the Liturgy Committee, minister of the Eucharist. I also serve as vice chairman of the Carroll County Department of Aging and Disabilities and chairman of the Aging in Place Subcommittee. I'm a former member of the Carroll County Solid Waste Review Board, member of the Knights of Columbus, and member of the Mother Seton Board of Directors. I've been mayor of Taneytown for 12 years, and I've served on the city council and served as mayor pro tem. was first elected to council in 1985, and I've been past president of the Maryland Municipal League, past legislative committee chair, current legislative committee member, chair of the Maryland Municipal League Communications Committee, past president of the Maryland Retailers Association Legislative Committee, served on the Governor's Smart Growth Committee, and a current member of the Governor's Intergovernmental Commission on Agriculture. For half my life, I have served the people of Taneytown as an elected official. During that time, my only interest has been the welfare and the achievement of our town and our citizens. My experience, leadership, and statewide contacts and knowledge make me the best candidate for the office of mayor. I've led with integrity, vision, and will continue to do so. I love this people, I love this town and our people. I'm currently active in the county committees and have been active throughout my life and my career as a public official. I've developed relationships over the many years of service that has kept Taneytown in the forefront. I meet regularly with other mayors and county and state officials, and I'm committed and involved in all areas that benefit Taneytown. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Donald Frazier, and I serve you on the on the Taneytown City Council, and I've been on since 2015. I'm married to Robin. I have 3 daughters, and we live on Bentley Street. On August the 4th, 2003, I was in a head-on collision with a drunk driver, and I was in a wheelchair, and he was killed instantly, the man who hit me, and I miraculously survived that. So since that time, I have viewed every day as a gift from God. I really should have probably died in that accident, but the good Lord had different plans for me, and I was able to recover from that. My pastor came to visit me at Lorraine Nursing Home because they wanted to send me to Kernan Hospital, but they had just opened the new rehab facilities right here in Taneytown. It included a pool. Mr. Merson built those, and I was really happy about that. And so I was able to come and do my recovery here. When I got out of the hospital, I was in a wheelchair for 6 months and couldn't walk without a walker for the other year until about 2014. In 2013, we bought 211 East Baltimore Street, which was the Agora headquarters. It is currently the Agora headquarters. And while we were there, the town dug a ditch down the alley, and all the water ran down that ditch and into my basement, and I had 2,000 gallons of muddy water in my basement. So I called the town and complained and asked if they would come out and help me to fix that. And I was in a wheelchair when I did that. And they cussed me on my own property. 4 people that had served the town for over 100 years in total accumulated time cussed me. When I got home with my wife, I said, oh my, something's wrong at 17 East Baltimore Street if we have people that come onto your private property and cuss you out on your private property. So I decided that I would take a great interest in the election, and I supported 2 candidates, Judith Archie and Joe Vigliotti, for the next council election, and spent $1,000 of my own money to do that. I've been interested in town politics. When you call the mayor's cell phone, the message says, Taneytown is a great place to live and work. And I believe that is so true. There's so much potential. The mayor of Thurmont told me that you have so much potential in Taneytown with your long storefront, unlike Thurmont, when we just have a very short storefront Main Street. I believe that we could do a lot better in renovating our downtown. We could do a lot better in leading the town. We could do a lot better in listening to constituents. I want to be the mayor because I want to fix things so that we are more responsive to the things that happen and complaints. I went to visit Daisy Avenue, and I want to see people like this. When they have a real problem, I want to see their problems overcome and fixed, and the staff to work better together. I'm really proud of my accomplishments. I hope to share more about that when I have more time. And I ask you to vote for me when the mayor election comes up on May the 6th. Thank you so much.
Hello. I just want to begin by thanking the CMC, by thanking the Chamber, and thanking the Times for leading the effort to make sure that we're all informed here in Carroll County. I want to thank everybody who's here tonight. We're going to tune in for making sure that they themselves are informed. So I'm Daniel Haynes. I am a citizen soldier, I'm a public servant, and I'm a lifelong resident. My parents divorced when I was 2 years old, and Taneytown has been my home ever since. I was a regular attendant at city council meetings before I'd even finished high school. And by the time that I was trying to get through my first semester of college and hold down my second job. I was appointed to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. It wasn't too long after that I was appointed to the Carroll County Cable Regulatory Commission. And it was pretty small in scope, but it was a learning experience, so I jumped on it. And I've made it a point to try and volunteer for anything and everything that I can, because I don't think that a community can work if we don't get involved in it. And so I just can't see myself sitting on the sidelines. In March of 2017, I could no longer afford to pay for school. I was looking for another job, and I was worried that I might not be able to continue serving on these local boards. So I enlisted in the National Guard. And that allowed me to continue my education, and that allowed me to continue to serve my community, not just at home, but to also serve my community at large. So now I'm getting ready to transfer out of community college, begin a new job, and hopefully win this election in May. And I strongly believe that public service is the greatest form of patriotism, and I am a red-blooded patriot. And I strongly believe that you ought to be the change that you wish to see in the world, and there's a lot of change that I want to see in Taneytown. So running for office was a conclusive choice for me. I think that Taneytown needs better leadership, and I feel fit to provide it. So make sure you vote on May 6th.
Good evening. My name is Barry Lucas, and if all the rumors that I've heard the last few weeks are true, I'm the mystery man in this election. So hopefully after tonight and in the next couple of weeks, I'll be able to let you know who I am. So I am a man that is service-oriented. From the time I was young, my life has been devoted to service. I started out as a grocery delivery boy for the elderly and a volunteer at our local hospital. At the age of 17, I joined the Armed Forces and spent 21 years defending this country in the Army National Guard, and the Navy. After my retirement from the Navy, I continued in my service to the government. I worked for NSA for the next 20 years. In November of 2017, I retired. Along with my service to the country, I've also been in service to a number of organizations. I'm on the homeowners board of directors for Carroll Vista, where I live. I go to Taneytown Baptist Church. I'm a life member of the Disabled American Veterans and Veterans of Foreign Wars. And on a very fun note for me, around Christmas time, you can see me walking around in my Santa suit. I have for the last 3 years been Taneytown Santa Claus. So why am I running? Well, for the first thing, for those 40 years that I worked for the government, they had this interesting little law called the Hatch Act that restricted federal employees from being in politics. Upon my retirement, I didn't have that restriction anymore. And so I think I have things that I can bring to the table. In my 40 years of working for the government, I have managed large organizations. I have been a program manager for multi-million-dollar programs, and believe that those things will help me in governing here in the town. I also believe, like I've heard a few of my colleagues say, that communications is a key. I think that the people in Carroll County, the people in Taneytown, they want their voices heard by this council, by this mayor. And I believe that we can do a better job of hearing their voices. This town has 7,000 residents. That's 7,000 groups of ideas that can be shared. But the time has to be put aside for those sharings to happen. So why here? So my wife and I spent about 3 years looking for a place where we were going to retire. We chose Taneytown because we fell in love with the people and we fell in love with the laid-back atmosphere, and we want to see that continued. So I hope you'll vote for me on May 6th. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Darrell Hale. I have lived in Taneytown for 44 years, and in those 44 years, I've been a very active individual. Years ago in the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, and as I got older, I joined the United States Marine Corps and left this beautiful city for 4 years. It's amazing. Sometimes it takes going to a third world country or one of the 19 countries that the Marine Corps took me to realize that Taneytown is not so bad. So returned from the Marine Corps and met a beautiful gal who I now call my wife of 24 years. We have 2 children, Morgan, 22, and our son, 17. I'm proud to announce that my daughter and my son will join me as a Francis Scott Key High School graduate. Something that's always, I was, very excited about that. So that will happen in a couple months. I've always liked serving our city. In 1999, I ran for and was elected to the city council here in Taneytown, and to another term 4 years later. During those 8 years, I learned one thing that government needs to do, especially at this lower level of government. We need to be proactive in the community. We need to talk to people, not behind a keyboard, not on the phone, but walking out in the community and talking to our citizens. They want that. They need that. It's the only way to find out what really is on someone's mind. 12-word text or something on Facebook isn't really going to give you the clearest picture as to what's going on in town. Years ago, I worked with the police department to form what is called the community action groups. These community action groups became quite the deal. We had 11 groups at one time, and it kept the chief of police or one of his representatives busy 50 to 73 nights a year. It's a lot. I wouldn't do that again because my wife refers to those as single parenting days. But it did wonders for our city. Communication seemed to be increased because because the city council member was in front of these people 8 to 10 times a year, as was the chief of police. We heard firsthand what the concerns were of the citizen, whether it be speeding, a light that hasn't been repaired quick enough. Our police and city staff do a wonderful job, but they also need the eyes of people out there. We've all seen a light not working, a street light not working, and just rode on by thinking, well, someone else is going to take care of it. We need to get re-involved in our community. Taneytown is so crucial. I'm getting ticked down. The community action groups received 2 governor's certificates of merit from Governor Bob Ehrlich for crime prevention in our city. I'd like to bring those back. A lot of people have been talking to me, interested in bringing them back, and I will work very hard to do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, candidates. We're going to start the questions, and Paul, we're going to start with you. And this question came from the audience, and this is a quality of life issue. With the value of property and safety on Main Street are tremendous priorities, and we feel they're at risk from a direct result of larger commercial vehicles coming through town. What actions would you take to help a bypass become a reality?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. The bypass has been on the books for over 40 years. And I can assure you this, that in the next 4 years as your mayor, I will work on it harder and longer than the last 40 years combined. It is something that needs to be looked at, and it would definitely create the traffic, well, getting out of Taneytown. But one thing I did notice, and I didn't mention before, I was on the city council from 2005 to 2009. And I was working with Nancy McCormick on the bypass for 2 years. One thing I did notice on the bypass is that it was only going from basically 140 to 140. That would not have eliminated the trucks out of, off of 194. So we had discussed bringing the bypass, continuing that around, whether it being from the south, on the east side from 140 up to 194, or whether it was going to be on the other side of FlowServe over to 194. That is something that needs to be done. It is going to be the only way to alleviate the truck traffic out of downtown. I hear from citizens out there that not only is it dangerous from them parking their vehicles there and losing mirrors, but also it is destructive to their homes. So I can assure you that I will put the time and effort in, and it's not just the city that needs to work on that. This is something that needs to be coordinated with both county and state officials. Thank you.
Mr. McCarron?
You know, I live on York Street, and probably nobody wants a bypass more than I do. But practical reality dictates the fact that we can't do it alone. A bypass will cost millions and millions of dollars. The bypass has been on the books since 1967, if I recall, and that's been discussed during my 34 years on the council each and every year. It's been a priority of council during my term as mayor and as council person. The way the priorities are established with the State Highway Administration is that the county has to name 3 priority road construction projects per year. And to fall in that category, there's a chance that these projects may get funded. That bypass has been in those 3 priority categories for several years during my terms. However, with the economic recession and the plain fact that other roads have taken priorities, like Route 32 going from Sykesville to Howard County, and Route 26 going from Eldersburg to Taylorsville, have taken priority over this. Taneytown can do the bypass, but we need partners. We can't do it on our own. If industrial partners should arise, or development partners should arise, that could be a reality. It's something we need to continue to be talking about, we continue to be moving forward, but it's just simply not in the cards for us to do it by ourselves.
Okay. I have gone through reviewing the plan for the bypass, and in looking at the maps that we've been shown over the last 4 years while I was on the council, it's clear that we've procured almost all of the land necessary for the next leg of the bypass. The big problem in Maryland is it's so deeply divided. We have a wonderful governor, and he is, recently I saw on the internet, he had a 78% approval rate. He proposed last year a substantial investment in infrastructure of roads, and when it got to the legislature, the Senate president and the House president, who's now deceased, blocked that and took all that money to Prince George's County. So one of the reasons we haven't seen the road improvements we saw under Bob Ehrlich, where we got the Hampstead bypass, is because of the parochial nature of the state legislature, where projects are stolen. I was appointed to the Central Maryland Health Systems Agency Board of Directors by the Carroll County Commissioners when I was just married, a young man, and we noticed the same problem with the state stealing all of our nursing home beds. So we went to Senator Smeltzer, and we asked him to hold up the legislative regulations, and he did, and we were able to put some leverage on the legislature and get the Longview Nursing Home in Fairhaven. The fact is, the bypass has not been discussed in an open session during my term. Last 4 years, we've not discussed the bypass. And if I was the mayor, I'd put it back on the agenda. Use our governor and the leverage we have with our legislature and our delegation to get a project approved by the state legislature, because Jim is right, we need that priority, and we need relief, like Mr. Chamberlain has said, from the truck traffic to the center of town. So please consider that when you vote for me for mayor.
Mr. Gaines.
So I think everybody can see the perceived traffic benefits that a bypass would have. That's a no-brainer. But as mentioned in the question, something that's talked about a little less is the actual effect that these trucks and heavy traffic have on people's homes. There's someone in the audience tonight who's been able to describe to me the damage that's being done to the bricks in the foundation of their home. And that's something that we have to account for. That's something that's very serious, because Main Street in the downtown are where all our historic buildings are. And if we're going to preserve those buildings, then a bypass is definitely something that will go a long way to that end. But Mayor Jim is right. We don't have the manpower or the money to fund this ourselves, to take care of it independently. But I think that something that we're not doing is aggressively pursuing this. I think it's still an issue because people can tell that it's just not a priority. And the least that I can do if elected is make sure that it is. I don't know everything about the bypass. I don't work for the state highway, but I will make it a point to inform myself. I will make it a point to make sure that it's a priority and that citizens are constantly informed and updated on the process that's being taken to get that resolved and get that moving forward. And I think that's the least that we can do. But we should definitely make sure that that is an open and constant discussion, because it is something that Taneytown does need. Thank you.
So parroting off of all of my colleagues, whom I agree with the way that it's been described and discussed, I think the one thing that we can add to all that is we have got to develop a way to prioritize this project to get it into the top 3 projects of the state. I'm not exactly sure how that would be done. Like Daniel, I'm not chapter and verse on the bypass, but if elected, the time and the study to go into trying to come up with a way to make it a priority enough for the state to want to do the work. I mean, that's really the problem is we've got to make the state understand the importance of getting this bypass done. The other thing probably that needs to be done is a little bit of a resurvey needs to be done. If it's 1967 since the bypass has been on the books, maybe we need to take a fresh look at the bypass and find a way that maybe by moving it or doing something to it, we can make it more of a priority. Maybe we can put some statistics with it that show a little bit more of the damage to buildings, the damage to our roads that are being done, and the fact that with a bypass, it would cost the state less in the long run by building this bypass and taking less damage to our roads. But I agree with all of my colleagues that it is something it's time for that to happen. Thank you.
The bypass, it comes up again. When I left office in 2007, we were just talking about the $150,000 we were going to use to spend on a preliminary design and engineering process for the bypass. Having moved here in 1975, minus the homes that go directly to a business or through a development, there's one new road, Antrim. That's it. You look at downtown business, and I feel bad for many of the businesses. I've seen over the years, over the many, many years, the businesses that seem to do the best, it's not for lack of effort, are the ones that are closest to parking. Parking on Main Street is no fun. I'm not the only one trying to leave my driveway on East Balmer Street at 2 p.m. on a Saturday and sitting there 3 and 4 minutes. It's part of living in Taneytown. I knew that when I bought the property. We love the house. But be that as it may, when I moved here in 75, the population was way south of 2,000 people. We're at 7,000. What more is it going to take? One quick way to do this is to have our our city government be more connected, network, go to Maryland Municipal League courses. It's a great way to meet people from senators, the delegates, what have you, and just the squeakiest wheel gets the grease, and that's what we need to do. We need to get it back on the agenda. The worst part is this. I recently found out in my research that we're now on this Maryland State Highway's 19 to 24-year plan for the bypass. We're not even on that 19 to 24-year plan. So that's bad news, gang, unless we actively get out there and make this happen. Thank you.
Mr. Mance?
You know, one exciting thing was in 1983 when the bypass was started and Antrim Boulevard was built. And it was like, great, we're going to get the bypass. Well, then, of course, all that interest went away. In the last 4 years, I wouldn't say the bypass hasn't been considered. In fact, through Planning Commission on Council, I was part of the group that made the offer for a property that's going into agricultural preservation that we cut off a bit of that to have for when the bypass does come. And that's what we can do locally, is make sure that we have things in place when the state finally sees the light and realizes how badly we need it, we're ready for it to go in. But at the same time, we need to help build the local businesses. Otherwise, we're going to become just like the old forgotten Route 66. We're going to put in the bypass and Taneytown's going to be forgotten. So in the meantime, we need to take steps to make sure that the land is available for this bypass, make sure we have businesses that are going to continue drawing people in. That way we can have an economic structure to our city. I don't think it's been forgotten. I think it's on the forefront of almost all of our minds. If you ask any of the council people, it's been talked about for the last 4 years at least, and we've taken steps to be ready for when the state finally comes to us, says we're ready to give you tens of millions of dollars to build a bypass. So I can proudly say it hasn't been forgotten, and I think everyone up here sees, you know, it could be possible, but we can't do it alone. But we can do things in the meantime to make sure we're ready for it. Thank you.
All right, we've asked one of our questions that's been handed to us, but is there anyone that wants to ask a question right now? We'll get the microphone to you.
Yes, sir. I'm here now.
And have you addressed the candidates while I wreck the technology?
Hello. I just want to follow up on the bypass. Not one of you mentioned what it would take to put pressure on the legislature in the state of Maryland. Not one of you said a word about it. How do you intend to put your forces together, the council, the mayor, and any planning groups, to put the pressure on the state of Maryland and show them the need for this project? Simple as that.
I think that as a follow-up, I'll give everybody 1 minute to go through and follow up that and answer that gentleman's question. So starting back again with you, Mr. Chamberlain, let's go one more time around, with just 1 minute this time, and address the gentleman's concerns.
Good question, sir. And as I'd mentioned, we need to work with the county and the state government officials. They're the ones, and when I was talking about speaking with them, it's because that's where the majority of the funding is going to come from. But we've got to be talking with our county commissioners. We've got to be getting in front of our state delegates, our senators, to go ahead and do that. That's where you got to put the pressure. And contrary to what some people have said, is by putting a bypass in is not going to hurt the downtown business. When you look, if you go down to Sykesville and you talk to the businesses downtown, when that bypass was put in, the businesses downtown thrived. So, but it's a matter of getting in front of it. Again, as Mr. Hale had mentioned, you've got to be the squeaky wheel. You can't just be talking to them once a year. It has to be a continual effort. And that's the way I would handle it.
Mr. McCarron?
Through my years in service to the city of Taneytown, I've met many legislators, talked to many legislators, been involved with the Maryland Legislative Committee for all those 30 years, been president of the league. And the simple fact remains that funding priorities from the state usually appear where the votes are. And that's the cold hard facts. If we're going to do this, we need to do it as a joint effort between developers, industries that will relocate in Taneytown, businesses that will relocate in Taneytown, and in cooperation with the State Highway Administration. You know, we have been blessed that they gave us our streetscape project, and this is just another project that we need to move forward and pursue.
Mr. Frazier?
All right. I served as the regional director for Senator Simon Ayer when I lived in Anne Arundel County, and my wife worked for Governor Ehrlich for 4 years in the State House. And we've done a lot of politics and getting to know folks. And one thing we've learned is that there's a committee of 3 people: the state treasurer, and the governor, and the comptroller of Maryland, that determine most of the capital spending in the state. And if you have their ear, you can do that. A lot of going to Annapolis is just hobnobbing with people, get to know people, and glad handing. But the fact is, if you can bring forth the real need to these people, this money can be allocated. Carroll County's delegation will work with me, if I'm elected to be the mayor of the town, to reach these people and to get this done. Now that we own the right-of-way, it's time to move it forward. We need to see action, not just words about it. And I would like to do that as your mayor.
As it regards to applying pressure, I think Councilman Wance actually made an excellent point. We can pester the ascending levels of government all we want, but if it's not ready to be put into place, we won't be a very squeaky wheel. So I think the county and the state would be much more inclined to cooperate and fund this type of project if we have absolutely done everything that we can to make sure that it's ready to be put in place. So yes, simultaneously, there needs to be more consistent and constant communication with the county and the state to make sure that this is on the forefront of their minds. But at the same time, we need to be doing everything we can here to make sure that a bypass is ready to go when they see the light, so to speak.
Yeah,
So being new to this political game, I can't tell you how I would go about doing it. But I can tell you that one of the nice things about being a newbie is you can ask all kind of questions constantly under the MO, well, I don't understand, and bother people till their eyes are green. So I mean, other than agreeing with the other gentleman here, to me, it would be a learning experience as well as a chance to use my newness to get in under people's skin.
When I said earlier about the squeaky wheel gets the grease, we need to just, our entire city government needs to reach out outside of Taneytown at the county and state level and get what is ours. The Hampstead, excuse me, the Hampstead bypass is just one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. Businesses haven't been hurt by it. It's a quieter community. It's a better ride. Route 30 is no fun. It's almost like my driveway on a Saturday. But having said that, we need to contact our delegates and individuals at the state level and get this back on the books. That's the first step. Thank you.
So expanding on what I said earlier, it's, you know, when governments have to work with each other, there's give and take. Now, generally, local government has a lot of give, and the higher governments, they like to take a lot. But in the meantime, if we continue showing that we want to make progress on this, doing our little steps, and they see the progress that we're making, our next step is to show tangible proof of why this needs to happen. You know, we need to document the damage being done to our streets and our buildings. We need to have a real traffic study done that shows how many trucks are coming through and what times a day, you know, we're seeing all this heavy traffic. And that's what's not happening right now, is we're not able to provide actual evidence. You know, we hear anecdotes, you know, well, you know, my brick fell off. We need to gather those and give them something tangible so that they can look at it and they can't deny the facts that we present to them. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask for another question from the audience, but I'd like to get off of the bypass for a minute. We don't have it yet, so we can't drive on it, but it's been a subject for a long time, and there is a complication in getting it resolved. So
I have a minor point. I'm infuriated that they took the crossing guard away from the children that have to go across the street and get to the middle school, and why was the crossing guard taken away?
could you just restate that so it all gets on tape, please?
Everybody hear me?
Yeah, but we're taping this
Put it
for
up to you.
broadcast.
We didn't hear you.
Put it right up to your mouth there.
There used to be a crossing guard for the children to go to the middle school across Baltimore Street. That was taken away, and I don't know why the state did that. Those children need that crossing guard there if they're going to be safe. The other thing is I walk in the morning and I cross the street there and cars run through that red light. The police can't be everywhere. I understand that. I think there needs to be a red light camera there. Thank you.
The major question is about the crossing guard, why it was removed, and is there any thought of that coming back? And Mr. McCarron, we start with you.
At the completion of streetscape, we elected to relocate the crossing guard to another intersection that was not protected by the crosswalks. It was a decision that was made by council, and so far has not really proven to be a wrong decision. There's been a good degree of protection involved with the walk, don't walk lights involved. And it has, if there is an issue with children being in danger, we certainly will look at it again. It's a small cost, and if it's something that will benefit the citizens, it certainly would be something that we could look at again. We've not really had any requests to re-establish the crossing guard at that location. This is the First request I've received from it, so.
Treasurer?
Yes, I know that the streetscape did revamp and fix our crossing sections. There's established crossing guards, a little light you can push to get the light, a button you can push to change the lights. But I was not aware until you asked this question that they'd recently removed a crossing guard from the one, what is it, at Baumgartner Street, is that right? Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I don't know how that's funding, but I think that's important to have a live person there because of the age of the people that go across there. And I think bringing that up is a good way to get that solved. I would like to have heard of that before tonight, but I wasn't aware that I'm not sure how that crossing guard was funded, but there is money in the budget to make sure that the school children can safely cross there. And there's money in the Board of Education budget also. So I think if we devote some attention to it, you might be surprised how easy it would be to get some more assistance in that, because we do have other crossing guards in town, so.
Okay, before I answer, I just want to confirm, maybe one of my colleagues here can confirm for me, the crossing guard was a paid city employee, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So if there are indeed incidents, and there is absolutely a need to have that crossing guard brought back, then I don't see why the city can't explore that. I don't see why the city can't, talk to some of the parents of children that are, going to Northwest Middle School and walk that way. And if there is in fact a danger, then certainly we should explore bringing back the crossing guard. But if in fact that is not the case, then perhaps where the crossing guard is now is in fact an appropriate location. But it certainly should be explored.
So it's very interesting that you bring that up, because on Friday, I was driving down that street and 3 youngsters went running towards the sidewalk and went to step off the sidewalk, and the car that was coming towards them fortunately was paying attention and slammed on his brakes. And I said to the person that was with me, why is there no crossing guard here? I mean, we always had crossing guards when I went to school. So I absolutely agree there ought to be a crossing guard at that place. And I think that if it isn't taken up by the time the election comes, it will be taken up after the election comes, because that is a very bad intersection for kids coming running. Because if you run in one direction or the other, you really can't see the traffic coming from the other direction. And if you're like most kids and you bolt, God help you. So.
Macrae?
For years, we had crossing guards at Trevanion and at Baumgartner, but there was no light there then. So, the crossing guards were extremely instrumental in that process. I'm going back a bunch of years, but the crossing guards used to cost about $15,000 a year for the 2 crossing guards at Baumgartner and Trevanion. I'd certainly be willing to spend those few dollars on the safety of our kids and our adults as well. Trevanion Road has always been an incredibly bad area. There's a lot going on, at a triangle. So I would, what I would do is ask the police to do a study, go by there, make more of a presence, especially during the school hours, and put together a package for the council to look at. Thank you.
Yeah, it was about 2 years ago, a young girl was hit at the intersection of Baumgartner, and I had come up to the intersection only a few cars after it had happened. And the sad thing is, a crossing guard wouldn't have prevented it. And that's not saying crossing guards don't have value, because they absolutely do. The problem is people are in too big of a hurry to get through the city. If we had red light cameras, if we had speed cameras, if we had signs on the crosswalks that said, stop when pedestrians are crossing, like we used to have right down on East Baltimore Street, get something in front of the drivers' faces that they need to pay attention for children and adults that are trying to cross the streets. I'm not opposed to crossing guards. I can think of 3 spots off the top of my head where they can go: Baumgartner, Trevanion, and Kings Drive, right by the schools. It's a necessary thing, but there's other things that we need to do every other time of the day to make sure that all pedestrians are protected when they're trying to cross the street. Thank you.
Mr. Chamberlain.
So yes, years ago, they did have crossing guards right there at Trevanion and 140, as well as there at Baumgartner. And I'd be in favor of bringing them back. You know, one thing that we have to do, as mentioned, is the people that are driving these streets, when you're coming up to a crosswalk now, not at Baumgardner and Trevanian, but there's another crosswalk right by the groomers, right downtown. That is the crosswalk where you need to stop if somebody is entering the crosswalk, but not at the intersections where there's traffic lights. They have buttons that anybody can push to go ahead and make it red lights everywhere so that they can cross. Same thing at the, not that it would do it at the city square, but same thing there. But yes, it would be much more safe. It would be more safe for the children, and I'd be all in favor. You know, people always talk about an expense. Sometimes, you know, a life is worth every penny, and I think that's what sometimes we miss. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those answers. We're going to move on to a question here from the table, and this is something I know is hot on everybody's minds, and unfortunately has been in the papers. We know that a number of officers have signed a letter in support of the interim chief being promoted to permanent status. Where do you stand on the search for a new chief, and what other changes would you like to see made in the department and how it functions? And Mr. Frazier, we start with you.
Okay, that's great.
Your turn.
I was troubled that the decision to put the chief in that we have now occurred in an executive session on February 9th. If you read the open meetings law, a vote on whether or not to choose a police chief has to be an open meeting, a public meeting, and has to allow for citizen input. You all were cut out of the input on this question on whether or not what we should do with the police department when the chief of police was indicted and the property room manager was let go and another staffer was left at the town. I'm troubled with the fact that these things have happened in private sessions. I've made a lot about that over the time on the council, and I think that we need to look into getting outside reviews for what to do with that. I have two resumes that were sent to me privately for people who wanted to apply for the police chief position. I've talked to four officers that, I've talked to a couple of the four officers that left our department to go to Mount Airy. And these people agreed with the anonymous letter that we got, that there were problems in the police department long before these actions were taken by the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms part of the FBI. So I'm not at all happy with the fact that we have not secured the property room or accounted for the missing items. Because I'm a good listener, a lot of people have come to me and told stories about how things were stolen out of the property room from them, including my own family. So I was laughed at council when I brought those things up. And I think that we've not had the leadership we need in the mayor's office. I'd like to fix that, where things like discussing how to clean up the police department would be brought into open session. And I think that's really important that you change that and you allow me a chance to fix that, because that is definitely broken the way that was handled.
Mr. Haynes?
So the fact that Taneytown has been consistently named, the second safest city over the past several years, I think is a testament to the efficiency of our police department. So aside from the controversy, the officers on the ground have been doing an excellent job. And so I think that the letter of recommendation is meant to be taken seriously. It really should, because it shows that they have confidence in Lieutenant Etzler, and you definitely want a leader who has an institutional memory. But there are merits in opening up the hiring process. But I think that this is simply a conversation that needs to be fleshed out after the election. But the recommendation that came from the officers should absolutely be taken seriously. So,
Mr. Guckus?
In my opinion, any position, particularly one that's going to have the kind of authority of a police chief, should be done as an open hire process. Resumes are received. The council vets the resumes. They look over all of the candidates, because if you don't do an open candidate call, you don't know what talent is out there, what training, what skills are out there. Nothing against Lieutenant Etzler. He certainly would be in the mix of that, and if he was the best candidate for the job, then absolutely he would get the job. But I just think we sell our our town's short if we don't go out and look for what talent is available and interested in the job, and then vet those people to determine whether they're the folks that should be doing the job. Thank you.
Like I said in my profile, I really would like to see, the city has to have an audit done at the police department. Mistakes were made. Our chief made a huge decision, which cost our city a blemish to our image. And we're just going to let our police department not be audited. I don't understand that at all. In fact, we should have done what DeWeese had offered to do in the first place, which is come up here, perform an audit, check in our training and so forth, and make recommendations to the mayor and council. Now, on the other hand, pending that clean audit, we have 2 viable candidates for chief of police. We spent lots of money. They've been in the city for a long time, in Lieutenants Etzler and Costello, and let them apply to the council for that position. I think that's the best way to move forward in keeping the troops, and again, the police officers on the ground are doing a great job. But we need to, for our city's image and for our police departments feel about themselves, we should have that police department's image blessed by an outside auditor. Thank you.
Joanne?
Anyone who's watched the last couple months of meetings would know that the city is already having an outside audit taking place. We've worked with other agencies. We've worked with the Maryland Training Commission to come in and make sure that our records are up to date, make sure the property room can be put back in order, and make sure that we're following all the appropriate protocols. So those things are already done. The city took it very seriously when these things went down, and that's why we put in place our own investigation and audit going into this. Now, what do we do about replacing the chief? Do our due process. Cast the net out and see who's interested in leading a department of 14 officers that can grow. As our city grows, our police department's going to have to grow with it. What we need to look for is someone with a history in drug enforcement, someone with a history in community engagement. Could that be an officer that's already on our force? It could be, and I'd love to see their resume along with that of anyone else that thinks they have what it takes to lead our police department. I think the city's taken some good steps so far, and in the next several months, we're probably going to get to the point where we're going to be looking for that new chief. In the meantime, we have an acting chief. I think he's doing a great job in the interim, and I do hope that he puts in his resume when the time comes for us to hire. Thank you.
Mr. Chamberlain?
So one thing I think that was overlooked, and this was the first report as far as what has transpired at the police department, is that both Lieutenant Etzler and the chief ran that police department by fear. Now, don't know that to be factual, but that was what was written in the paper. And that's something that has to be taken into consideration. And by having a thorough audit done of the police department, the facts will actually come out, and that way there we can decide which way to move forward for the next chief of police for the city of Taneytown. And I think that is the best way to move forward.
Mr. McCarron?
Thank you. You know, there is a thorough investigation being conducted right now by the Frederick County Sheriff's Department, Maryland State Police, and now independent auditors, all looking at different aspects of the police department to make sure the things we're doing are according to good police policies and procedures. Whether or not the acting chief will be selected for that position is really up to council after the mayor recommends that choice. I recommended Lieutenant Etzler as the interim chief, and rightly so. The council approved that. When issues of senior management have come up in the past, we've solicited candidate applications for positions, and they were reviewed. The best candidates were selected, and the highest qualifiers were interviewed based on those evaluations. The mayor will make a recommendation to the council, and upon that approval, the most qualified council candidate will be hired. I would expect this will be the procedure we follow to fill these current vacancies. These ongoing and current investigations and valuations will help us reach that decision. Thank you.
I'd like to go back to the audience for a question. We've got some hands up, so.
Aaron, you choose.
Under the Freedom of Information Act, I asked at the last meeting a copy of the unnecessary, I shouldn't say unnecessary, necessary tax expenditures brought upon by a group of people. There was 5 different categories I had, and the city was victorious in each one. It cost the city taxpayers $118,642. Question is, how does each one of you feel about that?
And that'll start with Mr. Haynes. Hale.
Haynes.
Haynes. Dan. I'm going to call you by first name. I know you better.
Sure. The issues that these lawsuits were trying to solve did not need to go to that extent to be solved. It is absolutely absurd that it had to get to that point. It is absolutely absurd that money came out of everyone's pockets here for those frivolous conflicts. Insane. Now, I wasn't on the inside, so I can't say that I know too much of the details about that. But I can say that the way that I feel is very upset. Should not have gone that way, so.
So I would like to parrot Mr. Haynes's outrage. $118,000 for a town the size of Taneytown. I mean, the things that $118,000 could have gone to pay for lawsuits that could have been resolved through discussion. You know, we've gotten in this country today, we've gotten litigious. Immediately, you don't like what somebody else says or does, you bring on a lawsuit. You know, we need to, as a town, as a people, we need to get out of this mindset of let's go to court. We need to get to the mindset of let's find ways that we can sit down, have a conversation, and work out our problems and use the lawsuits and use the lawyers for after we've tried every other means to fix a problem. Thank you.
I think it's sad that we had to spend that much money and waste that much of our city taxpayers' dollars and time on. The productivity lost at our city council is just stifling. The $118,000 would pay for half of the building that I'm hoping that one day soon, if elected, that we can get to work on creating a community center in our city. We don't have time for this. It makes us look bad inside the community and out. We get the jokes when we travel to Westminster, Baltimore, what have you. Oh, what's going on in Taneytown? There's no good answer for that. It saddens me to the core. It affects the way our kids feel about themselves, the way we feel as homeowners in this town, multiple homeowners, multiple buildings in some people's cases. And it just, it really does need to stop. Yeah, I'm very upset about that money. Thank you.
Mr. Wance.
Yeah, $118,000, we could have bought 10 crossing guards for that. You know, the last 4 years, the city's been a victim of serial obstructionists, people who their whole goal was to prevent progress in the city, to scar the image of the city. You know, fabricating things that they thought were wrong. Why did the city defend itself? Because we knew we were in the right. And every time it's been shown that the city was right. You know, and it can be appealed till kingdom come, but every time it's been proven. Your council worked hard, and we made sure what we did was right, and we defended ourselves accordingly. And it's a shame it costs that much money to prove to people that we're only up and up. Thank you.
Mr. Chamberlain.
So as everybody else, I'm outraged by that. You know, that could have been a reduction in your property taxes, could have been used for any multitude of other issues or other venues, things that the city wanted to do. And unfortunately, because of what has transpired over the last 4 years, the city has had to be reactive instead of proactive. And as mentioned, Taneytown, not only on social media, but when you're visiting other places. We are the laughingstock of Carroll County. Now, with my leadership, with my passion and energy, I plan on changing how people see Taneytown. And it's going to be a place that people are proud to live here, people that want to come here and shop, and businesses want to come and open here as well. And that's what it's going to take. And I'd appreciate your vote on May 6th. Thank you.
Mr. McCarron.
You know, somebody asked me, what are you going to change in your new term? You've been doing this a long time, but you change anything? Well, the biggest change that I see, the greatest thing that's going to happen is the fact that we're going to have a new council. We're going to have a different attitude. During the past 4 years, the mayor and council has struggled with costly and disruptive and frivolous lawsuits, as has been mentioned. Promotion of dangerous economic policies and addressing imaginary violations. This cost the city $118,000 just in lawsuits alone. Despite these disruptions, the mayor and the city council has been able to accomplish county-leading economic growth, improve facilities and citizen services. I expect that this disruptive council member may soon be out of office. With council committed to civility and ready to work jointly for the people, we'll be able to accomplish even more. Thank you.
Mr. Frazier.
Yes, well, I heard the report that came up at the work session. You're not allowed to speak at a voting session in Taneytown on Monday night, only on Wednesday night. And anybody could come to the well for 3 minutes and talk, and that's where this number, $118,000 came from. I prepared this, at the request of the town manager, Henry Hine, this report about sewer rates, which resulted in a proposal to reduce sewer rates based on the revenues that come in and developers. And the town, a part of that money is $54,000 spent to the Davenport Company to try to debunk this report. I think that money should have been spent, should never have been spent. And the town made a decision to that. There was no votes on that. And so the number is not correct, $118,000. It's propaganda. I also believe that it is the right thing to discipline people when they systematically break the open meetings law. The February 9th meeting that picked your police chief was an illegal meeting. And the only way to stop a mayor who says, I've done it wrong for 30 years, and I guess we'll just keep on doing it wrong, is to elect a new mayor. And one of the reasons I'm running for city council is because the conflict that's occurred in the last 4 years will not stop until we get new leadership that respects the laws of the state of Maryland and quits injuring private citizens. The other portion of that money was to prosecute people that had done nothing wrong. A person that speaks 90 seconds too long should never have spent city money to prosecute that person. It was embarrassing to see our city council in the circuit court since Christmas lying about what occurred at that workshop meeting. So it's a time to stop this wasteful, frivolous spending on lawyer fees. And it's a time to get new leadership. And I want to be that leadership. So please vote Frazier to fix it.
All right, there were a lot of hands the last time we asked. I'll ask again. And Aaron? Okay.
How do you see the future of historic Taneytown, and how do you plan to move it forward?
Excellent question.
And
Mr.
we
Haynes?
start? No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
Barry.
Douglas. We start with you.
Barry starts.
Wow, that's an interesting question to ask. There's 1,000 different ways you can move forward with historic. I think that the Historic Society is doing a bang-up job, but I mean, to be quite honest with you, I haven't really looked too much into what the future of the historic town could be. You know, I'm still trying to work on what the current town should be. I hope the Historic Society will continue to grow and to move us forward, but I mean, honestly, I can't speak to the question because I really don't have a thought on it at the moment. Sorry.
That is very tough. The historic community, the historic committee. I don't know what their thoughts are, what's come up already, what the participation in that group would be. When I was a kid, Taneytown looked to be one of the neatest places on the planet, with its big, beautiful houses uptown. And again, I think it gets back to traffic in town. What can we do about about historic downtown? I think we need to get the vehicles off the street. When we did streetscape years ago, it rung a bell when I sat there and I thought, why are we doing all this work? Okay, spending $25-ish million, whatever the number was, it's because we needed to. But when the realignment was done downtown at the square, what are we missing? A dedicated left turn signal. There's a catalyst right there. It's no fun coming downtown. It's difficult. Parking is not. I actually had someone say, "Well, where do you park at when you vote for the city? If you've not voted before, it's right there." So I guess getting people informed about things that we could do. The historic committee, I didn't realize it was stood up and has been active. I'd love to be a part of that if I could find out who runs that. But that's very, very difficult to get business downtown and thriving without better access to parking. I don't know where we put more parking, but maybe the signage. I mean, not everybody knows the parking behind the police department still, and that amazes me. Could the signage be better, what have you? Thank you.
So Memorial Park, when it was founded, was dedicated to those who served from Taneytown in the wars that our country has seen. And I'd like to see more recognition of those people in Memorial Park. All of the wars, all of the people who came from Taneytown, some of them gave the ultimate sacrifice and gave their lives for the freedom in this country. I think they deserve a memorial in their honor in our own Memorial Park. We also need to look at recognizing historical properties in the city. We have a lot of beautiful old buildings, some of which have a vast history that few people know about. Houses that used to be amazing schools, that with recognizable names that attended them. You know, there are a lot of things in the city that just need to be better recognized. Work with the Heritage and the museum about doing walking tours to show what important things have happened in the city. You know, this is not a nothing city. We have a history. We're the oldest municipality in Carroll County. We have a lot to share, and we need to embrace that. So I think if we take the time to get the plaques on these buildings, to show what they were used for, when they were built, and so people can appreciate where Taneytown has been, and then they can understand where we need to go from there.
Chamberlain?
Thank you. That was a very nice question. You know, one thing I think that is lacking in a lot of things that the city does is that the city council should not be the end-all and the be-all in making these decisions. We should be reaching out to the community to get an input from them as well. And I believe with the Historical Society and working with the citizens, these things can happen. You know, you're talking about, you know, parking downtown. Again, there is a parking lot right behind the fire department. Again, just poor signage. You've got the parking back behind the police station. You know, I know a lot of people, they don't like parking on the side of the road to get out to go to a business. And I think something that could be done is that the city of Taneytown have the employees parking back behind the fire department. Leave the parking lot open for downtown businesses. This will attract downtown businesses in the future. And it will allow those that maybe not be as agile as some of the younger folk in town to be able to get out in safety and be able to walk over to the crosswalk and so forth. So there's a lot of things we can do. But I think that citizen input is where we should start. Thank you.
Anyone that knows me knows of my love of history and the history of Taneytown in particular. We have a long and a rich history to be proud of. That answer is multifaceted. How do we preserve, how do we capitalize on this history? There's a lot of folks working together that can get that job done. We have a history museum in town that's unparalleled for any small town anywhere I've ever been. We have a heritage committee. Every issue of the Taneytown Record, I challenge our school children to answer a history question based on a historic figure from Taneytown. But it goes beyond that. It takes citizen involvement, like has been said. It takes council involvement, as has been said. Years ago, Neil Powell helped create a historic district downtown, which signified the main downtown area as historic development. Judge Getty, in his film of a number of years ago, pointed out that the Victorian architecture in Taneytown was preserved to a greater extent than anywhere else in the county. We need to continue those efforts of education, not only of our citizen base, but our young people, so they'll have a desire for history. But we also need to put some protections in place to protect our buildings downtown. We need to devise maintenance standards, something that I've brought up every single year since I've been mayor, to try to establish maintenance standards for our downtown buildings. It's a multifaceted project, kind of like the bypass. It takes a lot of people working together to get the job done, and we need to do it before it's lost.
Mr. Frazier. Founded in 1754, Taneytown is unique among towns as far as our heritage, our rich heritage. There's 157 municipalities in Maryland with city councils and mayors. Some have police forces and sewer treatment plants. But Taneytown is very special because it's on the road to Gettysburg, and I was so excited to see the sculptor approach the city about building a Civil War memorial. And I was very enthusiastic about that. The Washington Post ran a story regarding that, and there hasn't been a word about it since then. I'd like to wake up the idea of building some attractions to capitalize on the millions, over 1 million people that visit the Gettysburg battlefield over the years. I was proud of the fact that I was able to block the forfeiture of blighted buildings proposal on the city council, and I'm glad to see that we have the ability to renovate some of the buildings on Main Street, because we have some very historic buildings. I own a property, 211 East Baldwin Street. It's in the historic district, and the rules are very friendly toward renovating those buildings, very encouraging to do that. I'd like to see the town do more to preserve the rich heritage and celebrate the Civil War history of our location here. If you walk up the main street in Uniontown, there's several plaques about the Union Army's deployment through that area. And not much is said and done in the city council to talk about that, and I'm afraid that that monument's been put on the back burner. Talk to all different kind of people about how they feel about it, but I'd like to see us move forward. We just bought a new piece of parkland, and I was very instrumental on buying that piece of parkland on Stumptown Road, and I just think it's time to honor the Civil War and to bolster our history, because it is so rich. Dan.
So how do I see the future of historic Taneytown? You know, part of what makes people proud of something, whether it's an organization or some institution, whatever, is if it has a rich history. And we talk a lot about the image that Taneytown has. We talk a lot about how people perceive our town, how we're some redheaded stepchild of the county. Well, it would go a long way if we took much more seriously the rich history we have here. Now, granted, we're not Washington, D.C., we're not Philadelphia, you know, we're not a household name when it comes to American history, but we have history here. You know, President Eisenhower got his boots at what used to be the boot factory, and that place is in shambles now. It shouldn't be. And there's a lot of examples of that. Just these small things in town. They're little, they're small, they're not grand, but they can be improved. They can be polished. We can kick the dust off of them. And if we're proud of our history, I think it goes a long way in terms of making us proud of ourselves and being proud of our town. So I think that City Hall should do everything that it can to make sure that all of our historical items are taken care of. So that's how I see the future of historic Taneytown, something I'm optimistic about.
I'm going to pose the next question from the table because it was handed to me prior to the event starting tonight, and it's from the one of the local groups, the Taneytown Lions Club. Taneytown Lions Club has realize that there's a need for a Taneytown Civic Center and recreational facility. They've been working on and proposing to the city such a facility. We feel all the candidates are familiar with this project. As a candidate, do you see the need for such a facility? If so, why? And if elected, would you support this project by working towards a partnership with the Lions Club and the city? And
Start with Mr. Hale.
Mr. Hale, you are up.
Thank you. So I met with Mr. Wance on this proposed building, and I read the brief over the weekend, and it's exciting to hear, first of all, community organizations are willing to partner with the city and do something good for the entire city. There's been some talk about a facility, a multi-sports facility here in town. But also, I've been beating the drum for a community center since I moved to Taneytown. When I was a kid, for instance, there wasn't a whole lot to do. Kids say that today. What's true is we still don't have a community center. I would certainly entertain organizations within the city working with the city council to acquire and build, design some type of community center. Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Wance.
I think the city's long overdue for a community center, and what's interesting is there's a building now for sale that would do really well as a community center.
Yes, it is.
I think it would be appropriate for the city to sit back down with the Lions Club and point this building out to them, but we need to make sure whatever partnership we're into is a fair partnership. And the city in the past, when they start giving away property or selling property for $1, it seems to always come back and bite them in the butt. And I think that just goes to the city not looking long-term enough on those types of things. Is a partnership appropriate? Absolutely. Lions Club's done a lot for the community. But at the same time, we need to make sure we're looking out for the citizens and the financial resources of the city to make sure that it is a fair partnership.
Mr. Chamberlain.
Well, I was at the meeting that the Lions Club made the presentation to council, and I thought that they were very thorough in what they were saying. And I think that they understood that what they were proposing may not be a fit as far as from a property standpoint, but there were a lot of good points that were made. And I could assure you that if I were sitting on council that evening, the answer would have been yes, we wanted a partnership with you. Because at that point, now you're moving forward. You're not sitting back asking all these other questions that don't need to be asked. You're going to go ahead and form the partnership, and the dialogue begins at that point, and then you're able to determine the direction as a partnership. And again, making it fair for the citizens of Taneytown. That is my take on it.
Mr. McCarron.
You know, one of my campaign priorities is to develop this partnership with the Lions Club in order to provide indoor youth activities at some point in our city, some location in our city. And I think the council in general was favorable to this. The presentation that was given at the last council meeting was just simply an idea thrown out there. And like any ideas thrown out there, they need to be fleshed out. They need to be examined. They need to be evaluated. As Councilman Wance said, that the idea of true partnership is what we've got to accomplish. It's got to be fair for the citizens. It's got to be fair for everyone involved. And I'm eager to start that partnership and begin that partnership. Leonard Wance, Junior Wance, came to me, I guess it was back late fall, with the idea of proceeding with this project. And it's been fleshed out a lot since that time. I'm excited about what it could be. I'm excited about what it can be, and look forward to bringing that, getting that on track and getting it moving this next year. It's a wonderful idea, and the time has come. We need something like that for our kids, something we've talked about many, many times since I've been on council, but never has gotten any traction. It needs to get some traction this time. Thank you.
Mr. Frazier.
Yes, I've served 4 years as liaison for Recs and Parks. One thing that's become very apparent on that committee is that our parks are neglected. Lots of times we talk about developing a park. It's not prioritized at budget time. I voted against the budget this year because of the tax increases in it. And the fact is that the parks have been neglected when I'm the only person to vote against the DARA on Meads Crossing because they didn't have to contribute anything to Parks and Recs, and the park impact fee is $1,500 per unit, and we're hurting for money in that budget. I believe that we could cooperate with the Lions Club. I talked to Mr. Vanscoy tonight. Some tough questions were asked at the meeting that Paul Chamberlain and I attended, and the fact is that we should move forward with their proposal. I'm in favor of selling the building for $1, getting out of their way on the renovation of it. Bob Mitchell told me we put a new electric service in the building. It's right downtown where it needs to be. I'm not concerned, like Mr. Wantz is, about going to another building or not giving up ownership of the property. I think the town doesn't have to own that property. They were going to tear it down when I first was elected on the city council. So I think it would be wonderful to have the downtown facility they proposed. I'd sell it to them for $1 and come in with money to support the infrastructure approval and the cooperation that Mr. Wantz talked about would be under Bob Mitchell cooperating with the wintertime programs that could occur in that facility. The Lions Club is the only organization organized and funded well enough to bring that to a conclusion. At election time, there's talk, but we haven't seen the action on our parks, and we certainly haven't seen the cooperation with the Lions Club that should happen because their proposal is pretty well fleshed out. I'd give them a green light and go forward with it if I was mayor.
Mr. Haynes.
I absolutely see a need for a community center. Absolutely. When I grew up here, if I wanted to do something, my parents took me out of town. There was hardly anything to do here. And if you go down to Baker Park in Frederick, that old Armory building, that's a community center. You can swim there, you can work out there, you can play sports there, there's classes there, there's all sorts of things there. It is spacious, it's got everything that you need to truly engage the youth of the community. And not just the youth, but other people as well, whether they're adults or older, they all have something to do there. And I don't see why we can't have something like that here. We certainly can, and we should certainly make it a priority. It's been a conversation, it's been a request for so long, and we really need to start taking that seriously and move forward on that and explore property options, explore funding options, make sure that we have the most optimal and efficient partnership for the city to get that thing rolling, because people have wanted it for a long time, and we need to have one. So absolutely, we need a community center.
Mr. Guckus.
So I do not disagree in any way, shape, or form that we want to negotiate and we want to talk about it, but I believe in my heart of hearts that if the young kids of Taneytown were in this room right now, and even if their parents were in this room right now, there would be a massive hue and cry up for yay, 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 we need something for us to do, a place for us to go where we can have fun, be safe, and enjoy the time. I mean, in this country today, we've neglected places for kids to go and have fun and be kids. You know, we kind of sort of we take little people and we try to make them little adults. There's got to be places where they can go where they can safely play and jump and all those things. So I'm fully in support of this Lions Club proposal. I mean, certainly it needs to be fleshed out, but I think this town, it's time. This town needs it for their kids.
All right, we'll go back to the floor for a question. Raise your hand, the mic will come around.
Okay, I have one question, and that is, we are still hearing complaints about the high water and sewer costs in this town. I would like each of you, if you can, to explain in layman's terms why we have the high costs of water and sewer that we do. Additionally, I would like you to explain why last year the cost of the water sewer rate was dropped 5%.
And we start with Mr. Wantz.
Absolutely. Why did water and sewer rates go up? And that comes down very simple. The state came to the city and said, you need to make certain improvements to your system, which required the city to go into quite a significant amount of debt. Well, that debt has to be paid back. When you have the same old revenue coming in, it's not going to get paid back. So the rates had to be increased. Now, the council before me, they made a very responsible decision to increase them slowly. You know, over a period of time, they were increased X amount. It was a very nice way to do it for the residents. That way you're not hit with a big bill all of a sudden. As time has progressed in the last 4 years, when we looked at it, realized we were ahead of schedule. You know, things were going quite well. So we were able to have a decrease of 5% 2 years ago. And each year we look at it very carefully. It's always at the forefront of our minds because here's the surprise, we have to pay these water bills too. And trust me, we don't like paying high rates. So I promise every year, everyone on that council looks at it. And they don't do it because they want to see you pay high bills. They do it because we need to have a balanced budget for that utility fund. And there's going to come a time where that relief may come. Because eventually, most of this debt's going to be removed. And we're going to be able to lower those rates, hopefully by some substantial amount that people can see. But at the same time, it's really hard to tell what requirements are going to be coming down the road from the state because they can make us do whatever they want. That's the joy of being the state.
Mr. Chamberlain.
Good question. First of all, I think one needs to go back to the early 2000s for the city of Taneytown, when the city was at first, they were supplementing the water and sewer using the general account. And that was brought to the attention that the utility fund itself had to be self-sufficient. Now, then it was determined that one of the sewage plants was built and financed for 30 years, but the expectation for life on that was 20 years. So there was another hit to what we're doing. Then on top of that, now we're growing. And again, another upgrade to the sewer facilities, more wells put in place. But as you see that the rate is coming down, and the reason for that is as the town grows, then the debt is going to be reduced, bringing the rate continuously down. And again, you've got to be careful because as we move forward, you may have to get back to maybe upgrading the sewer plant again or even building another well. But with smart growth, thinking things through in the long term, I think that we can get a handle on those rates to bring them down. And some people don't realize that you can pay your water bill monthly. And I feel that what needs to change on that, we do things very archaic. And they charge you per 1,000 gallons when you're paying your bill. And I don't think that if you're paying your bill online, that you should be charged for that. And so I think by simplifying things for the citizens, we can go ahead and make it a little easier for them so they're not being hit on a quarterly basis. So that would possibly help as well. Thank you.
Mr. McCarron.
You know, most of what I said so far is exactly the truth. I mean, the MDE told us we had to fix our water plant, and we did, and it cost us money. The enterprise fund that handles the water and sewer does have to sustain itself, and it can't operate in the red. We can't take general funds. We can't have property owners subsidize rental units for use of water. Can't do it. For the last couple of years, that enterprise fund has been able to make its own way. We've been able to accomplish that goal of self-sufficiency. At budget time this year, we actually thought about lowering the water rates again. But the real fact is that since 2008 or 2007, we had a recession, and we didn't have any development. We didn't have any people added to our city. With the new development coming, Meadowbrook Section 4 and Meads Crossing, new faces, new neighbors will be coming to town. These new neighbors will share the cost in that water treatment plant. So rather than dividing the pie between 7,000 residents, maybe we'll divide it between 7,500 residents. That's going to lower the cost to everybody. The reason it wasn't lowered this year is because of that recession, many of the infrastructure improvements that are required. One major infrastructure improvement that's required is renovation of our water tower and our standpipe. That's budgeted for this year, so we figured that, well, let's get this out of the way and use the funds that we're getting from this new development to pay for this necessary infrastructure repair. And again, we're continually looking at it. We all want the water rates to go down. We are not the highest in the county, by the way. Thank you.
Mr. Frazier.
Well, Mrs. Wilson, thank you for asking that question. That is a good question about why rates did not go down this year. Before you vote on May the 6th, I would ask you to watch the council meetings on the YouTube that are available to watch. I've been tracking the water and sewer revenues since we prepared this for Henry Hine back in February 2017. If this plan had been introduced to reduce the sewer rate by 50%, we would still be solvent because there's been a huge influx in revenues that have come in to the water sewer fund, enough to fund a tax decrease. The reason that and I voted for that 5-cent reduction, and I'm happy to get that, but I did say it was a slap in the face when we could have done a lot more for people hurting. I know people who've lost their home. We had a $1,000 a quarter water bill. I brought my water bill tonight because I was able to accomplish with Joe Vigliotti and some others getting this shut-off notices broken into 4 different payments. That's some of the marginal things we did. Ms. Wilson was on a committee with me to try to generate more revenues for that, but the good news is we have more development. The real scandal is when Meads Crossing came in, they weren't forced to pay for that sewage plant, and you're paying for it now, that pumping station. Also, they drilled a well for $200,000, and instead of making them finish that well so we'd have more water, they have capped the well. Now we're going to argue about what to do with that well. That was what they had to drill a well. I think developers should have to pay the cost of water if they're going to come and build out our town. We've not seen that. We need reform in this area. I propose a 9% increase. It failed for lack of second. This council will do nothing, this mayor will do nothing to lower your water bills.
Haynes?
All right, so I'm going to bring the question back to concisely what you said. Can you explain in layman's terms why water and sewer rates became so high? And that's because years and years ago, the state came down with an unfunded mandate as it pertained to water quality. And so the city had to take out a loan. We did not have the money to take care of that. And unfortunately, we have all bore the brunt of that cost. But we've been able to lower water and sewer rates over an extended period of time because we have seen growth, because we have seen a balanced budget, because we have been fiscally responsible. And if we continue that trend, then over time we will pay off our debt and water and sewer rates will return to a much more manageable point for everybody else. So I hope that answers your question.
Mr. Guckus.
Until the next unfunded mandate. I mean, everything that you've heard is exactly true. The problem will always be in government. When our higher governments decide to stick it to the lower governments, there's not a thing we can do to stop it, other than voting out the higher level of government people from office. And I mean, I agree with Daniel and Mr. Wantz and the mayor. The fiscal responsibility being taken by our council has been wonderful. They've worked very hard to try to give back. You still got to maintain the system. If you give back all of the savings right out of the gate, you can't maintain the system. Another 2 years, you got to take out another loan to fix what stuff that has gone bad. So there's a balance with the monies that are over and above what comes in. Some of it has to go to fix the system to keep it operating efficiently. And as they've said, as we get more users on the line, more money becomes available to turn back over to us. Because it's us too. We're paying the same bills that everybody else in this room is.
Trail.
Gail, I just got my largest water bill ever, and I'm worried because the pool's not being used right now. I'm not washing my vehicles, I'm not watering my grass. I hope there's not a leak. But I say that to say this, the unfunded mandates have always been a problem, and there's nothing we can do about it. The beginning word with respect to our water is the fact that it must be a self-sustained enterprise. There's nothing you can do outside of that. So why is it costing us so much? Maybe water is just that expensive to bring to your household in a healthy way. Don't know. I've been gone for a while. I would assume the city staff is doing everything they can to do things as efficiently as possible. There's not a lot of magic there. You know, the plumbing's in place, the pumps are in use, and the facility is rather standard on its expenditure, I'm sure, from year to year. Again, the unfunded mandates, they're expensive. We're going to spend $500,000+ to redo a water tower. And guess what? It's going to make nothing better. It's just going to preserve it, which is important too. But those things, it's a very expensive enterprise.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. The next question is going to come here from the table, and a question very near and dear to my heart. Well, what can be done to remedy the existence of dilapidated and vacant buildings in the downtown area and to create more suitable storefronts for the kinds of businesses that attract people to downtown? What kind of businesses do you want to see downtown, and what is your philosophy for growth in the downtown area? Mr. Chamberlain, let me start with you.
Thank you. Very good question again. So first of all, with dilapidated buildings, again, it is getting the input from the citizens on what they see. It should not be just the council deciding what they want to do. So getting input and then implementing those requests. As far as businesses, I think it's imperative for us to be proactive to go out and find businesses that want to come into town instead of sitting back and waiting for businesses to come here. You know, you look at some of the businesses that have been filled over the last dozen years, and we're getting duplication of businesses. By us going out and meeting with other businesses that are successful in other towns, whether it be here in Maryland, whether it be in Pennsylvania, but trying to attract them to this town. And you have to have a variety of business. More variety of business downtown is going to go ahead and attract people downtown. You know, there's talk of possibly an escape room coming here, which would be awesome. It's a shame that the brew pub that's going to be opening up at the bowling alley, it's a shame that couldn't go downtown. That would have been a great addition to the downtown business. But again, keep in mind that by having these venues even at either end of town, it helps all the towns, because it isn't just about downtown. We need to keep in mind that there's other businesses that have been around for years that are not downtown. And we must be considering those businesses as well. So those are some of my ideas.
Karen?
It's kind of a two-part question. You know, my efforts since I've been mayor and even before have focused on maintenance standards for existing buildings. That's something that has to be put in place to ensure that our downtown and our historic area remains viable. You know, Taneytown really is kind of the poster child for business development. I take exception to the idea that we don't attract businesses. In the past August, the Carroll County Chamber of Commerce 7th Annual Business Challenge, two Taneytown businesses were among the 5 finalists. The grand prize winner was Brewery Fire, which is located out at the bowling alley, as Paul mentioned. The runner-up was Floral Festies, a completely unique flower shop in downtown. If you're not using Floral Festies for your florist, you need to be doing so. But just listen to some of the things, some of the businesses that have come to Taneytown just in this last year. Easy Does It Restaurant has had a rough start, but Taneytown banded together and joined and made sure that she could get over that hump, and the business is back in business and growing and thriving. The Firehouse Pottery and Arts moved from Mount Airy, took a chance, left Mount Airy and came to Little Taneytown. She's been welcomed with open arms. She's been a big part of our business community since she's been there. Joassa's Tea and Herbs, Floral Festies, Bollinger Gunsmithing, George's on York Street, Tonnery Barn, Rust Antiques, Caramel Kettle Popcorn Palace, and Johnson Plumbing, just a few of the ones that I could come up with in this very few minutes. So we're happy with the business growth. We want to make it continue. We don't want it to stop.
Mr. Frazier.
Yes, I'm happy with the local businesses we're here. I encourage you all to shop locally. You can almost buy anything you need in town now because we have a variety of businesses. But as far as the downtown rejuvenation that the question had to do with, I really think we could do more to keep our businesses by being more user-friendly. When I visit businesses, they complain about parking. They complain we could do more to make it user-friendly for the people that need parking. When I talk to local businesses, they talk about the water sewer rate, and the council will do nothing. And because this is not election year, the reason your water bill went down in 2015, last year was because it was an election year. This year, it's not going to go down until you get new leadership. And the fact is that local businesses need to have a friend at 17 East Baldwin Street that helps them do their business. One of our businesses went out of business because one of the councilmen ratted on them to the Americans with Disability and caused them to lose their lease. You know, we don't need to harass our local businesses. Flowers by Michelle came in, the new owner of that, over there at the barn across from the Catholic Church, complaining about the town getting out of the way so they could do some things. I know it was very expensive to renovate our property when we bought it, and we could do more as a town to cooperate with businesses and facilitate the growth of local businesses to keep businesses here. It's so important that our town, remember what I said about the Thurmont Mayor, we have a great opportunity. What we need is more leadership and economic development, not just to talk about it, but actually help businesses stay in business. I've been advocating a parking meter for Mrs. Wolf from the corner to the second thing so people could stop and buy coffee at her bakery. That idea is dead in the water if you bring it up at a council meeting. We need a new spirit of growth in the city. I want to bring that as your mayor. Please elect Frazier to fix it in May the 6th.
Mr. Haynes?
So the question was about vacant and dilapidated buildings. And the mayor is correct. We don't really have many maintenance standards, and I don't know why that is. We need to have them. From what I understand, the city does not employ a fire inspector or a building inspector. We are not doing very much to prevent vacant or dilapidated buildings from being an occurrence. And at this small, manageable level, we can certainly accomplish that. We're not Baltimore City. It's not some ravaging disease festering everywhere. We can contain this and we can change it. We can turn this around. And it's not hard. It starts at a foundational level. We need maintenance standards. We need employees that are dedicated to preventing this type of thing from happening. We need to give private building owners incentive to make their buildings not so vacant and dilapidated. So that is something I will definitely explore if elected to council. Thank you.
I concur that building standards are definitely a necessity, and I also believe that incentivizing building owners to fix their buildings or work on the dilapidated buildings. But I also think there's another tool that can be used that is a little less attractive but can be used to work well too, and that's de-incentivizing lack of doing things. You know, you incentivize people that want to move forward, that want to help get things along. Well, there's also the folks that don't want to do anything to get along and don't want to move things forward. And for those folks, I think we have to at least consider the thought of de-incentivizing lack of progress on trying to get the town a little bit more attractive for business to come in.
We can certainly strengthen our code with respect to building standards in our downtown business area, historic business area. Over the years, there have been facade improvement grants available from different organizations. I believe in Annapolis, over the years, they were huge, hugely spending money on facade improvement grants for little or no interest loans to help incentivize people to fix up their spaces. Smart growth, that's still a thing. Incentivizing business owners to have a business on the first floor and living space on the second, and looking after tax breaks for that type of building as well. So there's more we can do. Facade improvement would be a huge way to fix that. Dilapidated buildings, we need to strengthen our code. That's an easy way to deal with some of the buildings that are throughout our town, quite frankly, that need to be fixed up. Thank you.
Taneytown needs to develop our own livability code. I mean, the county has a livability code, but it only applies to rental properties. You know, there's houses that are an eyesore and a public health hazard that are not rental properties, so they're untouchable right now. That doesn't have to be so. We can create our own livability code, and we can hold them to a certain set of standards for the sake of our health and for the image of our city. There's been an employment position in the city that has been so thinly spread out, and even more so now as they're acting in another capacity, that what would really help us is a dedicated code enforcement officer. Someone whose job is to go inspect these buildings, you know, whether it's fire inspection, whether it's just general property condition, things like that. I hear stories all the time. This person has 3 cars in the driveway without license plates. Well, that's illegal in the city. Unfortunately, with code enforcement, it takes someone to go out there and do it. When they're so busy on other projects, that tends to fall to the wayside. It's not their fault. It's the fact that we need someone dedicated to do that. And that's a lot of where we're falling behind on. Because we don't have anyone with those eyes going around the city picking these things out. And then we need to give them the code to enforce those things, something with teeth in it. You know, whether it's fines or incentives, however it needs to go, that's the route that we need to take, our own livability code.
Okay, I'd like to go back to the floor for the next question. This gentleman over here has had his hand up a number of times. Hang on, let him bring the microphone to you.
Am I going to the gentleman? It's the moderator.
Yeah, to the gentleman over here.
Sorry.
Good evening. First, I'd like to say I'm a little disappointed that I don't see any women up on the dais.
That's great. We had 2 women last election.
And the question I have is, the town of New Windsor is currently operating a pay-as-you-throw for trash collection. According to a story in today's Carroll County Times, it seems to be very successful. Does Taneytown, would they consider something like that? And if so, how would it operate?
We start with Mr. McCarron.
Well, you know, the idea of pay and throw is not new to the city of Taneytown. Our acting city manager, while a councilman, chaired a committee to investigate that. He did a thorough investigation and found out it would be a rather onerous system to employ. So we discontinued it. We didn't think about it anymore. The idea, I guess, is good, but it's very inconvenient for the citizens, very big brotherish in my opinion. I don't think that our town is that type of town. I don't think that we need to be the Rockville of Carroll County. I don't think that we need to put that kind of pressure on our citizens. Through negotiating our trash contract this past year, we were able to save a considerable amount of money from our previous hauler. Had a few bumps in the road before they finally got on track, but have been providing pretty good service since then and have saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars in trash pickup. I really don't see as the pay-as-you-throw program fitting our small town model as yet. This is my opinion. I'm really not in favor of it.
Mr. Frazier?
I believe it or not, I agree with the mayor.
Wow. I need to change my pen.
I'm the only one to vote against the current contract because I was concerned that Hughes had done a great job, a Carroll County business done a great job for 9 years. And even though they were not the low bidder, I thought we should continue with them. It is one of the things we get. I pay over $1,000 in municipal taxes on my property taxes each year. And with that, I get large items hauled away. I get a yard waste hauled away on a certain day. I get a recycling bin that I don't pay for, and I also get a no limit on actually the number of cans you can put out. Some days I put out 1 can, sometimes 4 cans. And I think that it would be bad to make people sort things out. I was concerned at the announcement from Jim that we might, under the new environmental Gaithersburg company that gets our trash now, have to put all our recyclers, you couldn't put them in a plastic bag. You can't put, regulating that. Some cities in Maryland have harassed the residents by making them do things with the recycling and other things in a way that it makes it no fun at all to live in those towns. And I think we're on pretty much the right road as far as trash collection. I wouldn't have changed vendors. I think one of our other towns didn't give it to the low bidder either because we should support Carroll County businesses. At the time that we awarded that contract, this company had no trucks anywhere in our county at all. And so they had to rent a spot from C.J. Miller's to bring one truck up to pick up our trash, and they were taking it to the Hanover Junction transfer station. So the fact is that a bad decision, I think, was made by the council to change vendors. I wouldn't go to paying anymore, pay or go, and I think that we can keep up the good service with trash collection. You call the city if you have any questions, and they'll be attentive to make up any shortfall.
Dan?
I apologize, Mr. Rabinowitz. I want to make sure I fully got your question. May I have it repeated? Is that okay?
The question was, the town of New Windsor has instituted a pay-as-you-throw program, and the town of New Windsor has instituted a pay-as-you-throw program, and according to a story in this morning's Carroll County Times, it seems to be very successful. They reported a 23% decrease in trash collection, which makes their dumping fees a little bit less. I also wonder what are people doing with that other 23% of trash, but.
So there's the rewording of the question for you.
So I think that perhaps New Windsor had a different circumstance, and going that route with trash collection was necessary for them. But I don't think that it's really a necessity for Taneytown. Then again, that's certainly a conversation that we can have, but to echo what's been said previously, I think the way that we're doing trash right now is cost-effective and getting the job done. But it certainly is worth exploring that to see if there are any benefits that would be had for Taneytown. Sure.
So to revert to my Navy days, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's it works well, why change it?
I agree with Barry. My mother-in-law lives in Hanover, Pennsylvania, and they have a pay-as-you-throw. Oh my God, it's complex. It's I don't think it's very healthy to have trash laying. Long story short, they are incentivized to take trash to the local recycling facility. So the way they do it up there is your magazines, your papers, that type of thing, your paper products, you have to take them to the recycling facility. Well, and that's been a challenge with her. So, and like Barry said, I like that from my Marine Corps days. If it's not broke, don't fix it. So, yeah, that's something that I would not be interested in. Thank you.
Those numbers sound really good to the county, and they like to make it sound like it was a big success. I had the privilege of making an awkward situation at a table at a dinner where I had one of the commissioners sitting there and some residents from New Windsor, and I asked the question, how do you like your new trash program? Everyone at the table rolled their eyes because the residents hate it. The commissioner didn't really want to talk about it. Why did their trash usage go down? Because they have friends out in the country that'll burn it for them. That's how it went down. You're not fixing a problem. You're creating more of a nuisance for the residents. Will this happen in Taneytown? Dear God, I hope not, because that's not something else we need. And the other thing New Windsor likes to complain about, they have higher water rates than we do. So I feel bad for them, but let's keep Taneytown out of that hole.
Mr. Chamberlain.
So when I returned from the Air Force, moved into Bel Air, Maryland, and that is the way that their town did things. And you bought from the city office, you bought stickers for your trash, and you'd put them on your trash bags, and that's how you didn't have a can, you had to put just put your trash bags out on the curb. Now, you notice that some of the homes in the neighborhood, they weren't putting out any trash. So where was it going? People taking it, throwing it on the side of the road, people taking it, throwing in businesses' dumpsters. You create a whole nother issue. And I think that's what you run into with this thing. So my opinion would be no. However, it comes down to, again, getting out and getting the community involved to see what their thoughts are. And again, I think with level heads and you discuss the pros and cons of things, I think that people are going to come to the conclusion it's better off the way it is. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more question, and we're going to take this one from the floor.
There's been a gentleman in the back who's had his hand up the whole time, and he just hasn't been seen back there.
All right, we'll go to the gentleman in the back. Aaron, the fellow back there. Thank you, Dan.
All right. Hello. So I grew up on Frederick Street, so I'm well aware of what trucks do to historical homes. My parents' home is very, very, very old. So I guess just a quick brain thinker, I guess I hope that the councilman and the new mayor-to-be will take into consideration is for 40 years you guys have talked about a bypass, and I was completely against the bypass until I was given time to talk to several of you about it. So I am pro for it now. But for 40 years you talked about a bypass and you explained the cost, but you spent millions on a streetscape. Wouldn't that be the same thing as, you know, detailing a car before a hailstorm? I don't understand knowing the effects over 40 years, because if it's been talked about for 40 years, there's been issues for it. But you spent millions to do a streetscape knowing it's just going to get ruined anyway. So you would not wash your car before you know bad weather's coming. But we did that, and it's a long-term effect. But that being said, just something to think about. I guess a lot of people in here think the same way, because I've talked to a ton of people here. My question is, as a small business owner and contemplating bringing my business to Main Street in Taneytown, I've walked around, I've looked at exactly what you guys said, the buildings that are crumbling, the upkeep on certain buildings that I've went in and seen. As a mayor, as the new council members, what would you do during your term or terms to bring new business in? Not go out and find other business, but why? Why, if someone were to come to you in a meeting or whatever, why should we bring our businesses to you if we're having so many small issues everywhere else?
We don't want to focus too much on the bypass. I don't know if you were here earlier. We went 2 different questions on the bypass, but he's talking about what would you do to encourage businesses to come to downtown Taneytown. And Mr. Frazier, you're first up.
Well, I think I already addressed that also. We could be more user-friendly to businesses. We could be, as a town, we could show leadership. We also could do a better job in recruiting people. I've said it again. We could, simple ideas like putting a 15-minute parking sign in front of Mrs. Wolf's Pastry, there, the Stone House Cakery. Dead in the water at the council. Good ideas, no good deed is unpunished. And we need to change leadership in order to get the town to move. Talk at election time. It's time to do real economic development, just not events. I would be very interested in seeing a younger person be our economic development director. I also would be very interested in efforts to be present at some of the local business fairs and to show all the benefits of being in Taneytown. I agree with what the mayor's phone says. It's a great place to live and work, and it's a great place to shop. But we need more action from City Hall in order to generate the kind of economic growth, instead of just rotating businesses that come and go and come and go. The parking issues and these issues of not harassing our local business is important, and being in touch with them and following up with them. Several businesses told me this week when I went door to door to businesses, they've never had a visit from the town. I think that's unforgivable, because we spend over $100,000 on economic development now. So I would advise you to get a new leader and some new leadership. I like the slogan, Brad, of a new generation of leadership, but we really do need that in economic development to keep our town vibrant. It's a great place to live and work, and I certainly would like to be able to lead a renaissance of the downtown area.
Dan.
So when it comes to bringing new business in town and why they should be here, it's a difficult question, I think, for the town to answer, because we don't have a whole lot that makes us investable, right? We are positioned so gracefully between Frederick and Westminster and Gettysburg. And so many of the franchises and corporations that we regularly shop and patronize have already established themselves there. So why would they come here? The 7,000 people that live here are already making the trip to those 3 cities to solicit their business. So it's too much risk
It's too much loss for them to start up here. So we need to have City Hall expand recruiting and marketing initiatives to get businesses in here. They don't all have to be just small businesses. You know, I don't think if we, you know, this idea that we need to just have small business for the sake of our small town culture, I think that's ridiculous. You know, we need to recruit the types of businesses that haven't already established themselves in the 3 other cities. We need to have a much more involved and you know, energized marketing program that will recruit all these other businesses. And that needs to be a priority at City Hall. So.
So I think 2 things on that topic. The first one is success breeds success. You know, as new businesses are coming online here in town, and they're showing that they can be successful and they can move forward, other small businesses around the area see that. And that's part of what helps to grow businesses and make businesses want to come to this town. You know, business owners are there to make money. If they come to a town where they're not going to find success, why would they move a business into the town? I think the other thing that the town probably needs to look at is building its economic development team. Right now, it's a person of 1, and that's the economic development for the town. You know, you need some folks that, even if it's just some part-time folks working with that one person, to go out and start surveying around what businesses are around here. You know, go to Sykesville or go to Gettysburg and say, hey, have you ever thought about opening another shop? Taneytown's a great place to do that. And then to show some of the success stories that are going on in Taneytown right now. But you can't do that with one person. So I think that the 2 things, one that's happening right now is there is some success going on in business in Taneytown right now. You know, the mayor spoke of a few of them earlier. But I think we also need to kind of think about expanding our development team to get out a little bit more and start trying to entice companies to come here. Thank you.
We have a committee or commission for almost every facet of our government. Barry has an awesome point. Giving Nancy more tools, ears, and assets to do that job. The businesses that I see in town, I'm very happy with. I'm pleased to see it, in my opinion, a little bit of a rejuvenation in downtown. The Pottery Place is one of the most fascinating business plans I think I've seen in a long time. That is not a big box Amazon type store. It's very refreshing, very new. And that's what we need. You know, success does breed success. Building the economic team, I keep hearing that we need to make changes with our economic developer. Nancy's been always very resourceful and helpful, but maybe some help is needed, because running a new business, getting a new business in town requires a lot of work. You'd be surprised how many businesses come into town with not a very waterproof business plan that's going to keep them viable down the road for reinvestment in their building. So, thank you.
Mr. Wentz?
I think the first thing I'd say to somebody who wants to open a business in Taneytown is recognize the charm of Taneytown. Come downtown. It's such an amazing, walkable place. Go business to business. I went around Saturday morning. It was great. I bought a bag of tea. You know, that's kind of an unusual thing, but it was really good tea. And that's the charm that you find in downtown Taneytown. Going back to livability code, making sure that business owners can lease usable buildings. You know, we've had issues in the past where they were leasing a building that was full of mold because the property owner had no interest in doing anything with it otherwise. It comes back to making sure there's a livability code in the city. Marketing initiatives is an important thing. Now, the city is not responsible for marketing your business solely, but at the same time, they can provide the guidance. They can provide the resources that you can utilize. You know, the city has a website. We can put your business on there. But at the same time, there are other ways that they can help new business owners learn how to market themselves, whether it's through the city or through the resources at the county. Our economic development director has done a great job on a lot of facets in the city. Sometimes you just need to refocus a little bit. And it could be adding someone else on there or simply deciding a better way to bring in businesses or to attract new businesses. And it's a conversation that just should happen every couple years of how are we going to refocus economic development in Taneytown. At the same time, encourage potential business owners to talk to current business owners. That's one thing you see, even current business owners don't talk to each other. You know, it's teamwork. They all want to succeed. They all want to benefit the city. I encourage anyone who wants to open a business here to talk to the current business owners. That way they know what they're getting into and what sort of resources they can get from them as well.
Chamberlain?
That was a very good question. One of the things I think is imperative for the city is to get out of the way of businesses. I think all too often, city government makes new businesses jump through too many darn hoops to get their businesses open. And I think that they, instead of hindering a business, I think that they should be helping them to get their doors open in a timely fashion. Time is money. And all too often, that happens. You look at, you have some businesses that maybe are set off the street, and then there's no way for them to have any signage so people can see that they're there. I know at one point they were looking to have, they wanted all the business owners in town, if they wanted to put a sandwich sign out, they wanted them to have the same identical signs. And I think that they didn't understand. As a previous business owner, I understand, I get it. I understand what it takes to run a business. As far as marketing and branding, I understand that as well. I'm in the RV industry, recreational vehicles. I have branded myself as the RV extraordinaire. I have people calling me from all over the country to buy an RV. And that is because I've branded myself. And that is what we need to do for Taneytown. We need to market the town. We need to brand it as the place people love to talk about, people want to come visit, and business owners are just knocking our door down to come open here in town. So that's what I can do for the town, and I hope that you vote for Chamberlain on May 6th. Thank you.
Again, I'm very proud of the way our businesses have grown, particularly since Streetscape, and I'm very proud of our economic development director, which is renowned throughout the state for her expertise. I'm very proud of her ability to bring business owners together during Main Street meetings and board meetings and talk about events that will occur downtown. I'm very proud of her efforts to revitalize the business community in general. And that's not to say there's not room for improvement, there certainly is. Developing a business in a downtown is a hard job. Ask Westminster, ask Taneytown, not Taneytown, ask Hampstead, ask Manchester, ask Mount Airy, ask any of them. And they'll tell you, they ask me at every meeting, what are you guys doing to attract all those businesses? What are you guys doing to establish this rapport among your business owners downtown? How do you get that done? And we do it through things like Main Street groups. We do it through networking meetings at the bowling alley on the second Friday of every month. And again, the priority, one of the priorities I have, one of the three priorities I have in my campaign is continue the momentum that's going forward with our downtown's basis and focus on businesses that we need and we desire. More restaurants, a hardware store, a dry cleaners, things that are essential services for our citizens. We need to do a better job focusing on those businesses, getting those to town, no doubt about it. But we also need to do a better job in focusing on our businesses that come to town. If you come to Taneytown and decide you're going to be open 3 hours a day when you feel like it, you're not going to be successful. So we need to help them help themselves and help Taneytown. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to call just a slight audible because I know the time's getting away from us, but there's a lady in red back here. Now, I know that didn't work out too well with John Dillinger, but I'm going to take a chance and allow her to ask her question, and when she's finished, we're going to do the closing statements. May take a few extra minutes, but please indulge us.
Thank you. I think this is a very important question. Several of the candidates talked about community engagement, about outreach, talking to people, being more responsive to the people, making sure the citizens are informed. Residents need to be heard. So we, the people, need to know what's going on, and that you need to know what we think. So it's a two-way street. And I know we have the newsletter, but it's really not enough. It comes out every 2 months, and sometimes the stuff in there is just right there on you. The scheduling. Sometimes I think it's already passed, perhaps. I know there's a Facebook page. I just found out about this meeting yesterday at the bowling alley. It was posted on the Taneytown Facebook page about 6 hours ago. I just think we can do a wider net and do a better job of bringing in the community. And it's hard in this day and age to get people involved. But as you know, I think they could be better use of social media, more timely things. And perhaps, I don't think there's been a town hall meeting in a long time on like a specific issue. Just think of ways to involve the community more. And I'd just like you to address that, especially those that said the need for it. How do you envision that? What do you see happening?
Daniel.
So communication is one of the primary components of my campaign. I think that 3 minutes a month to talk to your local politicians is not enough at all. I've actually spoken with Barry at length about the idea of conducting a town hall meeting at some consistent interval throughout the year, because there needs to be a time dedicated solely to hearing citizen feedback, absolutely, without a doubt. And another thing is I've seen minuscule nonprofits that have public outreach coordinators. We have nothing like that. We have nothing like that. It's not just running a Facebook account. It's not just running a Twitter. Social media and communication is a science now. There are multi-million-dollar companies, multi-billion-dollar companies that are paying people extraordinary salaries to put their brand out there, to advertise their service. Now, granted, the message is a little different for Taneytown, but there is still a message that is clearly not being heard, right? And I absolutely agree with you. We can do much better to foster communication in this town, and that is absolutely a priority of this campaign. So I hope that answers your question.
So I agree with Daniel. Communications is paramount, especially in today's fast-moving world. It's okay to lean on social media, to use social media, but who's answering the mail? Who's at the back end? If you sit down and you type up an email, or you type a Twitter, or you type whatever medium you use to contact the city, who's there on the other end receiving your email? I don't know that right now that the town has a social media coordinator, somebody whose job it is to answer the mail. Now, certainly the council and the mayor answer the mail, but it may be in that newsletter, it may be a couple days later. I mean, we really need to, in this day and age, at the speed of life, to have somebody that's the focal point for answering the mail for the city. I mean, they may not be able to give you the answer immediately, but at least to let you know, hey, I got your email, we're working on it, we'll get back to you in X number of days, and then keeping you updated about it. I think from an individual level, myself, I love to talk. I love to talk to people. I mean, on the scale for the personality, I'm like a 15, an extrovert. So I would envision myself going out and having meetings at different places throughout the year. Just putting a note out on Facebook saying, hey, I'm going to be at Easy Does It tomorrow for 2 hours if you want to come by and talk to me. Because it's that important. Not everybody's on social media. It's important to make the council accessible to the people. Thank you. Great question.
Council is accessible to the people, and that means getting out of your home as a council member and going out into the streets, into the neighborhoods, and meeting with these people, understanding what their needs are. Years ago, I thought I had a property, and my tree blocked the street light, and I had many other things to do, a newborn, that type of thing, to help care for. And I got around one day and got my chainsaw out, and I started cutting down this tree, and it got the light out to the community. Before I was finished cutting down the tree, my neighbors started helping me clean up that mess. it inspired me to, that one day, you know, if I'm ever in the position, try to make do with this outside of my small community. When I was on the council, I helped create the community action groups with the great help of a lot of people. We were very successful. We received 2 government citations, like I said earlier, for the prevention of crime. It was huge. It was very helpful. That motivated a lot of people. It got the bad stuff out of the neighborhood more quickly because the people were talking to myself as a council member and a member of the police department. Very, very quick, very fast results. It was incredibly motivating. Some of the other programs pouring out of that. You know, our kids have to do 75 hours of volunteer hours for school. What are they doing? Why not help in our town? It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to be a council member the way I was, because I was out in the town 50 to 75 nights a year. But that's what it's going to take to improve. Yeah, sometimes it felt like that. It felt like that. It really did. But 50 to 75 nights a year is a lot of time. But that's what it takes, as long as you have the ability to recruit other people to help you in that endeavor. Thank you.
Mr. Wance.
So I'll start by talking about one of my failures in the last 4 years as a councilman. And it's hung with me every day, and I've had people come up to me saying that they wish that never failed. That was when I proposed the idea of a communications coordinator position in the city. Someone whose job it was to get the information out to the people in whatever way they could. It didn't get through. Go figure. But that's okay. We can change that. Who here gets the Carroll County Times? Yeah. I don't. There's a lot of stuff put in there about public hearings in the city. I don't ever see those because I don't get the Times. Might be my generation. Who here's been to the city website? Yeah, not even half. It's kind of cumbersome to go through. I've looked at it myself, and I'm pretty good with internet stuff. The problem is, no matter what you try to reach people with, the chances of them seeing it are pretty slim, depending on where they are. But if we can make a consistent newsletter, you know, the Taneytown Record comes out, what, 2 months, once a quarter, make it consistent. You know, make it attractive. You know, make it something that people want to pick up and see what's happening in their city. You know, colorful pictures, kids picking up Easter eggs at the park. That's great. You know, a lot of people in this city don't do social media. Let's give them old-time social media. Let's give them a magazine. Let's give them something they can see all the information that's going on. When are the public hearings? When is there going to be a development being talked about on the other side of town that no one's heard about? It happens in our meetings, and the meetings are on YouTube, but they're not on YouTube. We need to reach them where they can be reached. And not everyone gets the paper, not everyone is on social media. There are other ways we can do it, and we need to explore it, and we need to have someone dedicated to making sure we're engaging these people.
Mr. Chamberlain.
Once again, another great question. And I'd like to start by saying that, you know, I believe this is right up my alley. From when I first announced that I was running for mayor, I have been doing a Facebook Live. Now, I realize not everybody's on Facebook Live. On top of that, I'm out hitting the streets every weekend. I'm out waving in the morning to people. I'm talking to people. And one thing I had mentioned the other night on my Facebook Live, that in the event that you put your faith and trust in me as your next mayor, every month I will do a Facebook Live to bring you up to date on what is going on in the city. Now, on top of that, I had somebody else mention to me that they see neglect by nobody in small government not ever being approachable or not putting themselves out there to sit down with. Something else that I feel would be an excellent way for people that want to have those conversations is to having at one of the local businesses, you know, a coffee with the mayor or even other members of the council. Sometimes you don't want to come and talk in front of the full council, and I understand that. But it has to be a multifaceted approach to getting the word out. Not any one particular type media is going to go ahead and fit everybody's lifestyle. So multifaceted approach, and I can assure you that I will be out and about as I am doing currently. Thank you.
Mr. McCarron?
Indeed, communication is the key, and I'm a firm believer in that. There were no 3-minute restrictions 4 years ago. People could speak as long as they wanted for anything they wanted. It's only when that privilege was abused that we had to put these restrictions in, the same restrictions that are involved at the county level. As far as accessibility, I think that you know, we live in an age of communication. You can get your news wherever you want it. You can get it on Facebook. You can get it on the website. You can get it on YouTube. Our council, every meeting is recorded on YouTube. Watch it at your leisure. What's more, I am a downtown businessman. I'm a Taneytown business person. My whole life is in a half a city block. I live 3 doors from my office and next door to City Hall. Everything is spent, my whole life is spent there. And I have frequently people walk into my office at the corner of York and East Baltimore and sit down and chat about city issues, and I welcome it. I challenge anybody that's ever done that for me to say, I'm sorry, I don't have time for you now, come back later. I stop what I'm doing and I talk to you. Every one of my business cards that I pass out and are available on the counter at City Hall have my personal cell phone number on it. And I welcome your call and I welcome your input. You know, some mayors joke about getting calls late at night or on the weekends about this, that, or the other thing. One of the first things that I did when I was mayor, I had a call from a lady on 4th Street telling me that somebody dumped a bunch of beer cans in her front yard. Just got back from church. I went down, picked up those beer cans and brought them home. Anybody can, everybody on council is accessible, and I use myself as that example.
Mr. Frazier.
Yes, I'd like to answer your question in 2 parts. First, I'd like to address this idea that we only have 3 minutes to talk, and we can only talk on Wednesday night. The entire budget process, $4.4 million worth of spending. People that came to every meeting only got 6 minutes to talk about anything. If I was the mayor, I would change that immediately. This idea of putting a rope in front of the council so nobody can come up and talk to the councilman. The idea of timing, a little timer behind my head would be torn down if I could become the mayor of Taneytown. Because other towns, and I've been to MML, they allow people to talk and they allow people to have input, and they don't ridicule and gabble people to silence and try to arrest people, charge people with crimes if they come to the town council meeting and talk 90 seconds too long. The fact is that Mr. McCarron is personally responsible for restricting the amount of input you can get at the council meetings. So communications would be improved if people felt welcome to come to the council meeting. Only the mafia brings their lawyer to every meeting. Only criminals would bring police officers to every meeting. The police officers can get lost and the rope can come down and invite the people to come back in and communicate to the town like they ought to be able to and give us liberty again. The second thing is, I believe we are accessible, like the mayor has said. Most of our cell phone numbers are public and these sorts of things. We also have an IT director that we pay a pretty good amount of money. And just last year, we hired another communications person. I saw him today when I went to the old bank building to talk to Bob Mitchell. And the fact is, we have the ability to make our websites work well and to do some of the ideas that my colleagues have talked about with the current staff we have. I don't want a new position like Mr. Wantz. I just want to be able to manage those positions, to be able to develop the kind of communication that allows every citizen to feel connected with their city government again. Vote Frazier to fix that.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. We're going to give all of the candidates 3 minutes to provide a closing statement, and what I would like to ask as they do that is that they incorporated in that closing statement, tell us a little bit of what your vision is for moving forward with Taneytown. And I believe we are starting with Mr. Gukas, please.
Thank you. So first I'd like to say that I am humbled and appreciative for all of you being here tonight. Our country works because people vote and people care enough to come out and hold their people that are running for office accountable. And so thank you all for being here. I believe that my experience and my background can add value to Taneytown's town council. In my opinion, the council's job is to represent our citizens with integrity, honesty, and respect. I live these attributes every day to the best of my ability and look forward to bringing my experience and determination to Taneytown's council. The way that I hope to do that is through communications, for hearing what the people in this town have to say, and then trying to incorporate that information, those thoughts, those ideas, into the policies and codes that govern our town. The bottom line is that a town council is a representative of the town, of the citizens of the town. And by accepting a position on the council or as the mayor, in my opinion, you put your opinion aside and you focus the opinion of the town. And I believe in that. I believe that's what you elect people to do, is to represent you. So if I say in my mind, if I say something is right and the majority of the citizens of the town say it's wrong, I shouldn't be voting my way on that. And so that's what you'll get if you elect me as a councilman for the town of Taneytown, a person that will listen and do his best to follow what the citizens of this town want. Thank you.
Mr. Hale.
Again, thank you all for coming out tonight. Thanks to our moderators for putting this on and all the hard work of the chamber, and for the Carroll County government for allowing us to use this building tonight. I have lived in this town for 44 years and have enjoyed every year of it. I served many years ago for two 4-year terms and was fine going back to being a father and a husband. In recent years, I've seen our image be lessened, both in our city and outside. And I wanted to do my best to help correct that. And again, nothing I did while I was on the council did I do by myself. It took teamwork, it took integrity, it took experience that you grow in time, and listening to our citizens. Communication, we keep throwing around the word. Communication is huge, and it works best when people are open and receptive, but more importantly, you need to go out and get it. You know, small things like our city, you know, I'm not a big internet guy. But a lot of people who aren't on the internet, you go, wow, I didn't know the city was even thinking about that. Why don't we post our city agenda, our council agendas at certain businesses? Ask them if they would be glad to do that. It's another avenue of getting communication out to the people. And that's what we need. Small, easy, that's a whole lot less expensive than an IT guy. You know, letting yourself be available to the citizens is the most important thing you can do in this job. I know this because I've done this job before. My 40 years of being here, and my experience in management makes me a really good candidate for your vote, and I would appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wentz.
Absolutely. I'm offering you a new generation of leadership, and it's great when I can be promoted by another candidate who likes my tagline.
I do like it.
I have a vision for more inclusive and accessible park systems that's going to reach everyone in our city. I have a vision for better community engagement so that everyone can know what's happening in the city and that they can see on a new level what their local government does for them. You know, it's been said that city council is accessible. Yeah, we are. I don't know how many times you could ask the other council members that they've been called or have gone to sit down with somebody with concerns. They are accessible. You could always be more accessible, but you need to get it out there. Some people don't seek the information. Sometimes you have to hand it to them. Taneytown has a lot of potential. It really does. I've seen it in the 30-some years that I've lived here. I don't know how old I am anymore. And I see it for my kids now. You know, there's potential for them as they're growing up in this city as well. So it's time to move past the status quo. You know, it's time to grow. It's time to make Taneytown into something that we can all be extremely proud of for future generations, a way that we can remember the history of our city and then let the future take it from there and build them up into a great city. I hope for your vote on May 6th.
Thank you. Mr. Chamberlain.
Once again, thank you very much for taking time out of your evening to show up here this evening, as well as those that are watching at home, whether it's on replay or live. As your next mayor, I will provide leadership, passion, energy to turn this city around and be one, again, as I'd mentioned, that people want to come live here, businesses want to come open up businesses here, and I am going to be available to meet with you on an individual basis if necessary. And we're going to go ahead and develop the city council, one that is going to work together as a team and not have the kind of issues that they have had in the past. And there's one thing that you need, is you need to have the council working together so that we can move forward with a lot of the ideas that not only the citizens have, but the businesses have and so forth. And I can assure you, from a branding standpoint, from a marketing perspective, I could do the same thing for the city of Taneytown that I have done for my brand as a recreational vehicle executive sales consultant at Beckley's Camping Center. And that is how I have done that, through using YouTube, and I will use that same expertise moving forward, not necessarily with YouTube, but understanding what it takes to brand something and market. That is what's key to moving this town in the proper direction. And I ask for your vote on May 6th. Thank you very much.
Mr. McCarron.
You know, the theme of this panel tonight seems to be change, a new generation. I need to move Taneytown to a new level, attain heights, and I couldn't agree more. But my opponents, however, seem to want to paint a picture of stagnation or inactivity. With this, I emphatically disagree. There's a difference between rhetoric and reality. I'm proud of my record as mayor and my achievements over my terms. Taneytown is at a crossroads. Because of the recent death of our longtime city manager and the resignation of our chief of police, the mayor's role is one of leadership and vision. Day-to-day operations of the city are held by key personnel. Currently, we have an acting city manager and an acting police chief. These are true critical positions needed to be filled as soon as possible. Council elected to wait until after the May election for these final selections. My highest priority will be to fill these positions. The city can ill afford the consequences of having an active city manager and an acting police chief and a new mayor, even for the short term. My qualifications speak for themselves, and they're far beyond any of my challengers. My lifetime of service, my years of visionary and managerial leadership in both the business world and the political world prove my qualifications. I'm involved and an active member of my community, separate and apart from my role as mayor. My personal business office is located next door to City Hall. My home is around the corner. My position with RFS allows me the flexibility needed to be available to citizens and staff 24/7. Unlike my challengers, I do not work out of town. My campaign byline is integrity, balance, and vision, and I bring this to the office without question. I could add availability. My campaign priorities are to hire the city manager and police chief right away, to continue our economic development leadership by attracting new quality businesses and industry to our town, and add additional parks and recreation facilities. Work with the Lions Club to develop that indoor sports facility, open phase 1 of Bollinger Park, Eco Park, and to expand the athletic fields and undeveloped section of Memorial Park. I appreciate your support and encouragement, and I ask for your vote on May the 6th. Thank you all.
Mr. Frazier?
Yeah, thank you very much for this time. I thank you for the Chamber of Commerce for having this event, and these are our closing remarks. And I have 3 minutes to finish up the time here. The time is late. It's after 9, and there's cookies for everybody who wants to stay after and talk. I am concerned about the direction of the city from the leadership, from the top, from the leadership. We've been harassed on the city council for having a minority point of view. And I got the Taneytown record, and I highlighted 2 things right on here on the front of this issue. This is the April-May issue of the Taneytown record. And again, it says, again, this year, our tax rate will remain the same. I have never submitted a budget to the council that has called for a tax increase. I almost fell off the chair when I read that. If you understand the constant yield rate this year, by not lowering the rate, and I suggested a penny lower on the real estate rate, you're raising taxes by $44,000. When they, back 2 years ago, moved $26,000 to the water fund and then moved it back, you deserve a discount in the sewer rate, Mrs. Wilson. At least 9% like I proposed at the meeting that went nowhere, and then at least 3% for that movement of that money at all. The second big diversion and untruth written in the paper, where the abuse of this paper is, consider once again reducing the water and sewer rate. We lowered it last year, but the council decided to leave it the same. That decision was made on Monday. On Wednesday, you had 3 minutes to discuss it, okay? This paper was put to print over a month and a half ago, well, about 40 days ago, and he's already decided what the water rate's going to be before we vote as a council. We didn't get a chance to vote on that. When I made these proposals, they were dead in the water because it's a closed shop. You can't speak to the council, you can't get to the council, and we need a change in leadership. This is dishonest. It's abuse of this passage, of the mayor's passage in here. I would never lie on the front page of the Taneytown Record and say something that's not true. I voted against this budget because of the tax increase, and I voted against the one this year because of the tax increase. And I would encourage you to vote for Don Frazier to fix this kind of deception. It's deceptive and misinformation that comes about our water and sewer rates. We have more than a year's budget in the bank of extra money that we can use to help the taxpayers of this town. It's time to be honest about the numbers, having to stop getting PIAs. The town ought to be forthcoming with data about your town. It's your town. It's time to take it back. I'm Don Frazier. I want you to join me in the fight to bring integrity back to the city council and to fix these problems so that we can go on with the hope that we've seen from the other candidates. And thank you for the time tonight. It would be a blessing if you vote for me for mayor.
Mr. Haynes.
So
Yeah, the last words.
I know. Save the best for last, I guess. But we've got a lot of work to do.
That's right.
And it starts in May. And there is a lot of issues that were not covered tonight. So make sure that when you have time between now and then, you go that extra mile and you do your research. The candidate videos are coming out from the CMC soon. The Carroll County Times put out the profiles. And if you have any questions for me, don't hesitate to reach out. Please visit my website, haynesforcouncil.com. My vision for the town is one in which we are able to truly live, to actually work and pass the time, to make this place a destination, to make it a city that we can be proud of, one that is rich and fulfilling in its history. We can accomplish that. And if elected, I want to make sure that our city government does everything within its capacity to manifest that vision. I think it's only right. So make sure you vote on May 6th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we want to thank again all the candidates for coming here and being frank and honest and answering your questions. We thank you for coming out with your questions and your attendance and taking time out of your day. I thank you personally for your indulgence for the extra time. And now I have a request. We ran a little late. We've got to get this place cleaned up and closed up. So if you are able, please, and well, hopefully willing, but mostly able, because some of us are not as able as others. If you could help us stack up some chairs and maybe clean up a little bit in your area, it would be greatly appreciated, because we've got one maintenance guy here for the center, and he's not going to do all this by himself. So thank you very much, and have a great evening.
And there are cookies.
Yeah, don't forget the cookies.
What did I say?
I did a